When the snow settles, only one man is left standing. Surrounded by a monstrous red aura, he's just decimated an entire army and claimed a mountain of corpses as his throne. Without even turning around, the blonde commander shatters the silence by calling out Ash's name. Glancing over his shoulder, the commander demands to know why our boy abandoned his post at the Eastern Subjugation Force. Clutching his bleeding arm, our hero delivers a chilling response. He came all this way just to take his commander's life. This ruthless leader doesn't even flinch at the death threat, his red eyes completely devoid of fear. Gripping his blood-soaked sword, Ash starts connecting the dots out loud, accusing the man of using his entire squad as disposable bait. Betrayal cuts deep as Ash screams out in agony, revealing this cold-blooded monster is actually his own father. With absolute arrogance, the blonde man can't resist mocking his son, coldly stating that the wingless are only good for dying. Something shifts in Ash's glowing yellow eyes as he proudly declares his full name, Ash A. Elmheim. These Elmheims aren't just any family. They are the continent's absolute greatest martial house, sworn guardians of the royal bloodline. Sitting on the throne is the Roderick A. Elmheim, the undisputed head of the house and the sole possessor of their legendary power. But to understand what happens next, we need to go back to the freezing blizzard where Roderick saved a dying orphaned Ash on a mere whim. To repay that massive life debt, our guy became a relentless weapon, tearing through enemies and doing every dirty job his savior demanded. Despite all his sacrifices, Bro was constantly humiliated and beaten down by the other sibling for being a wingless outcast without a crest. Looking up at their malicious sneers, young Ash realizes the crushing truth. He has no magical wings to ever truly earn his father's respect. He explains that magical power is dictated by wing crests, a cruel reality that brands Ash as the only wingless failure in the entire bloodline. Refusing to accept that fate, Ash pushes his body to the absolute limit, convinced that sheer devotion and relentless training will eventually earn him a place. Surrounded in the freezing snow, Ash grips his blade waiting for his opponent. Suddenly, Ash spots a shift in the tree line. His instincts scream that the deadly silence is about to shatter. Out of nowhere, a massive squad of armed men surrounds them, and the whole forest holds its breath. Bleeding and desperate, Bro demands to know if this ambush is his father's ultimate reward for a lifetime of blind loyalty. Staring down at him, Roderick doesn't even flinch, coldly stating that a mere tool has outlived its usefulness and is now being discarded. His mind goes blank. Then the grief hits all at once. Gathering every last ounce of strength, our hero lunges forward to strike down the man who threw his life away. Something inside Ash snaps, his eye glowing a piercing yellow through the blood as he screams out the agonizing truth. He actually trusted this traitor. But his desperate strike is effortlessly deflected as the bitter regret of his foolish trust sinks in. A slow smirk creeps across the Roderick's face. That pathetic attack barely left a scratch. Before anyone can react, glowing red chains bind our boy to the ground while the two unknown figure leap into the kill. Brutal slashes tear through his defenseless body, each strike faster and harder than the last. Agony rips through his chest, forcing a blood-curdling scream from his lungs as his vision finally starts to fade. The two boys turn out to be his. Looking down at Ash with a cruel smile, they make sure the boy knows that lacking wings makes him nothing but trash. Humiliation piles on as the attackers stand over his broken body, taunting that crawling in the dirt is exactly where he belongs. Desperate and bleeding into the snow, Ash clenches his fist, demanding to know why they even took him in if he was just going to be discarded. Stepping forward, Roderick shatters whatever hope remained, coldly stating he never had any use for him from the very beginning. A violent yank by the hair forces our hero to look up into the eyes of his tormentor. Staring down with glowing red eyes, Roderick reveals his true sickening motive. He only wanted the power of the 7 wings hidden inside our boy's body. Shock washes over Ash's blood-stained face as he struggles to process what those words even mean. To make matters worse, the ruthless leader casually mocks Ash's mother, calling her nothing more than a useful tool. Turning his back on the dying boy, Roderick explains that Ash was merely a seed planted for his own selfish ambitions. Reaching out with a trembling hand, our hero begs for answers, as the man who orchestrated his entire miserable life walks away into the blizzard. Screaming the name Roderick in pure agony, Ash demands the truth, but his cries fall on deaf ears as his brothers raise their glowing blades for the execution. His pale hand drops into the freezing snow, the biting cold finally overtaking his fading senses. With the light leaving his eyes, Bro wonders if this frozen wasteland is really where his pointless life comes to an end. High above a completely different snowy landscape, a lone church spire pierces the freezing sky. Inside our boy's mind, the confusion is real. Surrounded by a blinding white expanse, he genuinely wonders if he just woke up in the afterlife. The biting chill of the frost seeps into his bones, forcing the young boy to feel the physical sting of reality. His golden eyes snap wide open as the impossible truth hits him. This isn't the afterlife, this is actually happening. Looking around the howling wasteland, our boy tries to process exactly where he has ended up. A quick glance down reveals something even more baffling. His limbs have shrunk down to a fraction of their normal size. Our hero can't process what he is seeing. None of this makes sense. Reality crashes down on him. He hasn't just shrunk, he is literally trapped inside the body of a newborn baby. Shifting his gaze, our hero notices the lifeless woman clutching him tightly, our boy wondering if she is already frozen to death. Suddenly a harsh voice cuts through the howling wind demanding someone be found. Armed men on horseback tear through the storm, desperate to track down the fleeing woman before the trail goes cold. Barking out strict orders, the leader demands his squad recover the stolen infant for Duke Roderick. Hearing that specific name echoes through his tiny head, leaving him utterly bewildered. That terrifying title brings the memory of a massive Roderick flashing before his eyes. Connecting the dots, Bro realizes these ruthless riders are actually hunting for him. Staring up at the falling snow, our boy pieces together the impossible truth. He was found on a night exactly like this, meaning he has somehow regressed entirely back to his own past. There is no time to panic, however, because a blurry figure is already charging straight toward his position. Pushing the impossible questions aside for now, Ash focuses entirely on surviving. The young boy desperately tries to escape. He knows staying here means falling into Duke's hand for sure. Desperate, our boy strains forward, dragging his tiny body through the icy wasteland. Every instinct in his body screams one thing: get as far away as possible. A strange yellow energy radiates from his palm as he forces himself to keep moving. The physical toll is overwhelming, and Bro realizes his infant lungs are already failing him in the freezing air. Searing heat courses through his limbs, melting the snow beneath his touch as the pain intensifies. He can barely drag himself another inch, leaving a long, desperate trail behind him. Something shifts in our boy. He makes a vow right then and there. He is going to survive this. In his mind, memory of his previous life flashes, the betrayal he gets from Roderick. He silently promises Roderick that this isn't the end. Finally, his tiny body gives out completely, collapsing motionless in the endless white expanse. Footsteps crunch in the snow as person in green dress suddenly approaches his lifeless form. Turning back, the young girl urgently calls out, waving her father over to the grim discovery. This man is Viscount Highfried, and the sight alone is enough to drain the color from his face. Scooping up the unconscious child, Viscount Highfried is left completely baffled as to how an infant ended up abandoned in this frozen wasteland. Peering closely at the tiny figure in his arms, the Viscount tries to make sense of the grim situation. The nobleman's eyes widen as the shocking reality sets in. Staring back at the impossibly long trail through the snow, he can't fathom how an infant survived such a brutal trek. Holding the mysterious survivor tight, Viscount Highfried questions exactly who this kid really is. Blissfully unaware of the nobleman's confusion, our boy finally gets a moment of peaceful rest. Moments later, deep within his subconscious, a mysterious red-haired baby floats through a dark, starry void, completely lost. Awestruck by the glowing feathers drifting down, our boy genuinely believes a divine messenger has arrived to take him away. But the dream shatters as tiny hands slam right on our hero's face, waking him up from his sweet sleep. Instead of the afterlife, Bro opens his eyes to find 4 overly excited girls looming over him, loudly bickering about not teasing him so his cute little nose doesn't fall off. Utterly baffled by the chaotic situation, our guy finds himself being pulled in every direction by his enthusiastic new caretakers. Stepping up as the voice of reason, the older white-haired girl frantically tries to shield him from the roughhousing. Refusing to be treated like a toy, our boy forcefully breaks free from their grip and lunges forward. Hitting the floor with surprising agility, he slides across the room in a desperate bid for freedom. Caught completely off guard, the red-haired girl curses in shock at the toddler's sudden explosive escape attempt. Panic sets in as Ash scrambles away at top speed, utterly terrified, while a relentless squad of girls chases him down. Something deep inside the boy snaps, and a glowing yellow power he never knew he had erupts to the surface. Launched high into the air on a pillar of golden light, he realizes with absolute awe that he's actually using magic to fly. Every instinct in his tiny body screams panic as the golden aura flickers and gravity violently takes over. Time is running out, and our hero knows it as he plummets completely out of control toward the snowy rooftops below. Bracing for a brutal impact, the toddler squeezes his eyes shut, completely helpless against the terrifying fall. Out of nowhere, a mysterious man in ornate clothing steps in, effortlessly catching the plummeting child mid-air. Our boy freezes. Nobody expected him to instantly recognize the face of his savior. This whole time, the man holding him was none other than Duke Roderick's older brother, Viscount Highfried. The realization hits our boy like a shockwave. He realizes he's been dragged straight to the rival Elmheim estate. This man is none other than the Highfried Elmheim, the head of Viscount House, a branch of the main house. He once stood as one of the twin wings alongside Roderick, entrusted with protecting the royal family. But in his previous life, the Viscount was die in a brutal civil war, along with the collapse of the Viscount House. The realization hits like a shockwave. Our boy has actually regressed to the past. Ironically, his grand escape from the Duke ended with him being scooped up by the Duke's own brother. Handed over to a gentle woman with reddish-orange hair, the adults start connecting the dots, realizing the baby's magic went completely out of control and launched him into the sky. Looking down with a warm smile, the gentle woman radiates pure affection for the rescued child. Pulling our boy close to her chest, she gently reassures him that the terrifying ordeal is finally over. Caught completely off guard by the tender touch on his cheek, our hero can hardly believe his senses. Standing just a few steps away, Viscount watches the heartwarming scene with a quiet smirk. Reaching out his hand, the man drops a heavy observation. This infant is harboring an unbelievable amount of power. Without hesitation, he pulls back the baby's clothes, exposing a distinct red mark on his side as undeniable proof. The sight alone is enough to drain the color from the woman's face as she recognizes the legendary 7 wings. Bro can't process what he is seeing, completely baffled as to why this legendary crest is etched into his own flesh. The memory hits our guy like a wave. And suddenly everything makes sense. Flashing back to a snowy wasteland, he remembers Roderick confessing that he only wanted the power dwelling inside him. All the pieces finally fall into place. That monster only took him in to harvest the 7 wings for himself. Trembling with pure fury, our boy clenches his tiny fist, absolutely enraged by the sheer audacity of the man who tore his wings away only to mock him as wingless. Shifting back to the present, the woman holds him tight, her expression turning dead serious as she addresses the nobleman. Staring into the man's half-shadowed face, she demands to know exactly what he plans to do with a child harboring such dangerous potential. As the woman's heavy hand rests on his tiny face, every instinct in Ash's body screams that he is in terrible danger. Deep down, the boy knows he cannot let this power fall into the Elmheim's hands. He needs it to exact his ultimate revenge. With absolute certainty, the Viscount declares he will take the child in as his own adopted son. Gently patting the infant's head, the man explains that this child is still just a fledgling who can't even fly on his own yet. The nobleman makes a vow right then and there to take full responsibility for raising the boy until he's ready to take flight of his own free will. Out of nowhere, a group of eavesdropping kids tumbles onto the floor, and the whole room holds its breath. Busted. The man's booming voice rattles the walls, leaving the tangled pile of culprits completely frozen in a hilarious state of panic. Blushing furiously, the young girl with white hair sheepishly admits they were just worried about the new arrival. A young girl with orange hair happily approaches the woman, eager to meet her new sibling. Peering down at the tiny infant, she excitedly asks what they are going to call him. Smiling warmly, the noble woman takes a moment to ponder the perfect title. Lifting him toward the moonlight, she names him Aster. A new star born into their family. A full decade vanishes in a flash, and as a carriage rumbles up to the colossal estate, the stage is officially set. Bowing deeply, a respectful servant welcomes the stern-faced Lord Highfried to the massive estate. Suddenly, a young boy with dark hair steps down from the cabin, his presence shifting the mood entirely. Calmly exiting a carriage with a sword at his side, the now older Aster arrives ready for whatever comes next. Offering a polite hand, Aster makes sure his sister Alphen steps down safely. A warm smile crosses her face as she thanks Aster, the memory of his arrival still fresh in her mind. The two siblings stand side by side, projecting a united front. Without another word, they proceed toward the grand estate. This isn't just a friendly, noble gathering. The sword dance is a fierce rivalry where houses under the Elmheim banner clash for dominance. Every step they take leads them closer to an arena designed to show off the young swordsmen carrying their family names. As the trio steps into the bustling courtyard, the entire crowd immediately stops and stares. Vicious whispers erupt around them, with nobles mocking the Viscount's family for showing their faces and trashing their decision to adopt a boy of unknown origins. Hostile glares pierce through the shadows, silently accusing them of dragging the prestigious Elmheim name through the mud. Our hero stands tall before the massive gates, fully aware that every judgmental eye is locked onto him. Alphen's face twists with frustration as she hears all those whispering. She orders Aster to ignore the venomous whispers. Her fist trembles with suppressed anger as she reminds Aster that showing even a hint of weakness here guarantees destruction. Bro remains completely unfazed, standing stoically beside his sister despite the overwhelming hostility. Turning to the young Aster, the Viscount bluntly explains that this pathetic reception is the Viscount House's current reality. He locks eyes with Aster, making it clear that he brought him here specifically to witness this harsh truth firsthand. The Viscount asks the young boy point blank if this pathetic turnout is a disappointment. A slow smirk creeps across our hero's face. He actually prefers this kind of cold reception. Hearing that, the older man throws his head back and laughs, clearly pleased by the kid's grit. This memory hits Bro like a wave. In his past life as the Elmheim family's ultimate disgrace, this exact arena hosted his most humiliating defeat. In an instant, his body surges with golden energy, proving he isn't the same weakling from before now that his 7 wings have returned. His eye flares a brilliant piercing yellow, a terrifying warning that our boy is fully locked in and ready to unleash absolute havoc. Standing before the massive estate, the trio prepares to face whatever lies beyond those grand doors. But what our boy doesn't know is that someone has been watching from the shadows above. Deep down, he knows exactly what kind of vipers are waiting inside, steeling himself for the inevitable clash. With absolute confidence, our guy declares it's time to make a truly spectacular social debut. His expression shifts into a fierce smirk, radiating an aura that demands absolute respect. The scene shifts to a massive circular arena, an era where knights reign supreme and settle everything with steel. These warriors aren't just fighting for survival, they are expected to possess both overwhelming power and undeniable splendor. Relentless attacks tear through the defender's guard, proving that true authority comes from raw swordsmanship. Delivering one clean strike, the blonde duelist shatters his opponent's balance, cementing his fame in front of the roaring crowd. The light-haired duelist refuses to let up, raining strike after strike down on the dark-haired defender without mercy. With one clean strike, glowing blue energy shatters the dark-haired duelist blade on contact. Standing victorious, the light-haired champion reveals that this overwhelming power stems from his absolute family symbol, the wing crest. Looking down from the balcony, Alphen admits that the grand arena is just as intimidating as ever. She even jokes that it makes perfect sense why her sisters Fren and Freya flat-out refuse to attend. Aster's gaze turns dead serious as he recalls his past life sword gathering. In his past life, a victorious duelist brutally mocks him, highlighting the ruthless nature of this gathering. Noticing his intense focus, Alphen calls out to Aster, checking if he's feeling the pressure. Alphen casually asks if our boy is nervous at his very first sword dance gathering. A slow smirk creeps across Aster's face. To him, this brutal environment actually feels nostalgic. Stepping in, the Viscount announces he has a conference to attend, leaving our hero in charge of looking after Alphen. Alphen immediately throws a fit, loudly reminding her father that she is a year older than Aster, while Bro just awkwardly teases her for being clumsy. Placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, the old man encourages our guy to use the gathering to socialize and build connections with his peers. But then his tone drops to a dead serious whisper, firmly warning Aster to keep the secret of the 7 wings completely hidden. As the old man walks away, Aster watches him go, quietly reflecting on the heavy burden of that hidden truth. Looking at the gathering, the nobles with glowing red eyes, our boy know this will be pain. Our hero scratches the back of his head, realizing that networking is going to be a nightmare with all these hostile glares. Curious and slightly concerned, Alphen calls out as Bro suddenly turns his back and starts walking away. With absolute confidence, Aster declares his intention to go make some new friends. Approaching the center of the room, our guy steps right up to a clique of arrogant nobles lounging on a couch. Sitting back with a drink in hand, the red-haired leader shoots him a questioning look, demanding to know who he is. A slow smirk creeps across our boy's face. Been waiting for this moment to politely greet Brother Daryus. Smiling brightly, Aster formally introduces himself as an Elmheim, proudly claiming his spot as the younger sibling. Instantly, Daryus drops the relaxed act and glares daggers at the newcomer. Leaning in, the other sibling whispers the juicy gossip, pointing out that our hero is just the adopted kid taken in by the Viscount. Daryus can't resist mocking Aster for having the absolute nerve to use the family name, bursting into deranged laughter. Daryus and Grian both are the heirs of the Elmheim house, and the very men who slaughtered him in his previous life. Inside Bro's mind, one thought echoes. Back then, these two seemed like terrifying, unstoppable forces. After everything our hero has been through, this is nothing but a bunch of arrogant kids playing pretend. A sudden voice calls out Aster's name, snapping him back to reality and leaving him wondering what will happen next. Alphen refuses to stick around for this, grabbing Aster's arm and urging him to leave before things escalate. But before they can make their exit, a voice calls out from behind, freezing her in her tracks. Daryus leans forward with a smug grin, immediately targeting her with a cheap shot about not hiding behind her father. The arrogant noble doesn't ask. He commands her to come over and entertain them, throwing his main house authority around like a weapon. She fires right back, flat out rejecting the order and reminding him that the Branch family aren't his personal servants. Brushing off Alphen try to drag Aster away while our boy try to stop her. Tension spikes as Daryus refuses to let them walk away, making it clear this conversation isn't over. A dark, serious shadow falls over our hero's face as he listens to the mounting disrespect. With a manic, glowing stare, Daryus prepares to cross a line that can never be uncrossed. He loudly broadcasts their family's darkest secret to the entire hall, mocking their father's failure to protect the king. Those cruel words hit their mark, detailing the brutal punishment their father suffered at the hands of his own brother. Trembling with rage, Alphen grits her teeth as Daryus delivers the ultimate insult to her bloodline. Something inside Alphen snaps. She is done playing nice and whirls around to furiously demand he take it back. Instead of apologizing, Daryus completely disrespects her by spitting a mouthful of red wine directly into her face. As wine dripped down, Daryus twists the knife even deeper, calling her a useless disappointment to her crippled father. Looking down with a sinister smirk, Daryus makes sure Alphen knows exactly where she stands, mocking her presence at the gathering. Humiliated and dripping with red liquid, Alphen can only glare downwards as Daryus cruelly suggests she wear rags next time. Stepping forward, Aster silently admits he was worried about how he'd react to seeing these faces again. Inside our hero's mind, one thought echoes. He actually feared he might not feel any anger toward these arrogant nobles. In a flash, Bro closes the distance and snatches the bottle right out of unknown young noble's hand. Placing himself firmly between Alphen and her tormentors, he feels a wave of relief. The fury is definitely still there. Casually tossing the stolen bottle high into the air, our guy calls out Daryus by name. Daryus catches the spinning bottle, completely unaware of what's about to happen. Without hesitation, our boy draws his blade and shatters the glass in a single strike, declaring them all the same pieces of trash they always were. A massive splash of red liquid erupts directly on Daryus's face, leaving him completely stunned. Shocked by the sudden assault, the other sibling cries out for his brother as the room descends into chaos. Wiping a stray drop from his lip, our hero casually notes that the expensive vintage is actually just cheap grape juice. Grinning wickedly, he mocks them further, calling the sweet drink absolutely perfect for little baby nobles. A sudden flashback rips us 3 years into the past, where a blinding explosion of raw power of Aster go out of control, Viscount screaming at Aster to rein it in before he slaughters his own sisters. Desperate, Marfa begs the unconscious Alphen to hold on tight as destructive energy tears through their surroundings. Screaming for everyone to get a grip, Viscount watches in horror as the children huddle together against the swirling energy. The sheer pressure of the 7 wings brings everyone to their knees, unleashing a dangerous power nobody was prepared for. Gripping his sword tightly, Viscount braces against the storm, desperately wondering if he can even control this monstrous force. Aster stands at the epicenter with glowing eyes, surrounded by golden raw energy of his own. Back in the present, a man bursts through the doors in an absolute panic, shouting for his master about a terrible disaster. Annoyed by the sudden interruption, the bearded man snaps at the messenger, demanding to know why their important conference is being disturbed. Delivering the urgent report, the messenger reveals that the sons of the Elmheim main and branch families are currently dueling. Roderick and Hyfried completely freezes. Nobody expected a fight of that magnitude to break out right now. Without wasting a time, Viscount leaves the conference as tension reflects on his face. Out of nowhere, Alphen bursts in screaming for her father, her absolute panic instantly prompting the stunned man to demand what just happened. A slow smirk creeps across the bearded man's face as he points toward the arena, clearly enjoying the unfolding chaos. Down below, Daryus and Aster are locked in combat, a rare clash between the great Elmheim brothers that has everyone captivated. Watching from the balcony, the bearded noble notes that depending on how this clash concludes, the fallout could be massive. Some of the conference members look deeply troubled by the violence, while others watch with eager anticipation. Stroking his beard with a sinister grin, the nobleman makes a dark prediction that this sword dance gathering is about to get incredibly ugly. Daryus does not hold back his insults, loudly mocking his opponent as a stray-born mutt who has no idea what true power looks like. The crowd erupts in awe as a glowing 4-wing crest appears on his hand, proving the Duke's son is operating on a completely different level. With absolute confidence, Daryus demands Aster to reveal his own wing crest to the audience. Taunting him for being embarrassed, Daryus gets a cold reality check when our boy calmly replies that showing off a mere pattern is what's truly humiliating. Flashing a calm smile with glowing yellow eyes, Bro casually admits he could never stoop to such a pathetic display. Stunned into silence, Daryus freezes. Nobody saw that level of disrespect coming. This isn't just a fight anymore, the stakes are set. If Aster wins, Daryus will apologizes to his sister, but if Daryus takes the victory, Aster will becomes his personal dog. Without hesitation, the enraged cousin leaps forward and slams down his blade, vowing to work his opponent to the bone. Both blades collide with a deafening crack, sending shockwaves through the grand hall. Pushed to the limit, the sheer force of the blow sends our boy skidding backward across the stone floor. Gripping his hilt tightly, Aster feels the intense physical strain as his hand visibly trembles from the heavy impact. Enveloped in a blazing red aura, Daryus prepares another devastating strike, screaming that this is what real power looks like. A barrage of sweeping attacks tears through Aster's defenses, each swing heavier and more aggressive than the last. Watching from the balcony, Alphen leans over the railing and screams Aster's name in pure panic. The bearded man watching from the sidelines, quietly noting that the young master's swordsmanship is still completely immature. Watching the explosion, the bearded man notes a crucial detail. No matter how clumsy a fighter's sword skills are, the overwhelming magic of a wing crest easily bridges the gap. If a single wing holds the magical equivalent of a flickering candle, the scale of what comes next is terrifying. Swinging his blade with manic energy, Daryus boasts that the raw power of his 4 wings is nothing short of a living explosion. Pressing the assault, Daryus relentlessly swings his weapon downward, taunting our boy and asking where all his previous confidence went. Unfazed by the onslaught, Aster calmly deflects the strikes while his opponent demands to know if his threat to extract an apology was just empty talk. Leaping high into the air, Daryus unleashes a devastating strike, roaring for his opponent to stop holding back and finally show his true power. Observing from the sidelines, the blonde man flashes a confident smile and declares that the outcome of this duel is already set in stone. Before Daryus can react, Bro closes the distance and delivers a devastating counter-strike that completely halts the red-haired boy's momentum. The sudden clash leaves Daryus completely frozen. Nobody saw that sudden burst of speed coming. Eyes glowing with a piercing yellow light, our guy stares down his opponent and bluntly states that he talks way too much. With one clean strike, our boy unleashes a massive arc of golden energy that sends Daryus crashing backward. Radiating pure, overwhelming power, Aster stands tall with his glowing blade, shifting the entire momentum of the fight. Delivering hit after hit, Aster's mind flashing back to the 10 agonizing years he spent mastering magic just for this exact chance for revenge. Gathering every last ounce of strength, our hero brings his weapon down in a fierce, blindingly bright overhead arc. Leaping high into the air, Aster slams his glowing sword down with such monstrous force that Daryus can barely keep his guard up. The sheer pressure of Aster's power brings Daryus to his knees. Watching from the sidelines, Daryus's brother can't process what he is seeing. None of this makes sense. Desperate, Daryus tries to assert his dominance, clinging to the pride of his 4 wings as he struggles against the glowing blade. Our boy says nothing, just staring down with glowing yellow eyes. That silence is worse than any scream. Suddenly, a massive burst of yellow energy erupts from the clash, tearing through the arena. Spectators are completely baffled, realizing out loud that the Elmheim family still possesses a monster capable of utterly dominating Daryus. Pushing his advantage, Aster intensifies the fiery assault, determined to end this right now. Up in the stands, the Viscount gripped the railing in panic, realizing Daryus is in serious danger. Under the overwhelming force, Daryus's blade begins to shatter on contact. A brutal memory suddenly erupts. A ruthless swordsman tearing through a screaming boy's arm without a shred of mercy. In that dark vision, Daryus laughs maniacally while swinging his bloodied sword. Snapping back to reality, Bro's eyes glow a piercing yellow as his body radiates pure destructive energy. Terrified, Daryus begs our hero to stop, cursing as he realizes he cannot hold back the incoming destruction. Viscount scream from the balcony, pleading with Aster to hold back before it's too late. With one final earth-shattering strike, Aster ends the duel, unleashing a devastating blast that obliterates everything in its path. Touching down with effortless swagger, our boy casually clicks his sword shut, leaving nothing but a shattered enemy blade stuck in the dirt to mark his absolute dominance. Our hero can't resist mocking his terrified cousin, suggesting he wear rags next time to hide the fact that he just wet himself. Something shifts in our guy's eyes. He isn't angry, he is done. Inside Bro's mind, one thought echoes. He is no longer the weak, wingless ash he used to be. For the first time in forever, Alfin, watching from the balcony, finally lets out a breath. Hard-earned and well-deserved. Aster allows himself this quiet moment of victory. Suddenly, our boy freezes. Nobody saw that coming. Out of nowhere, a massive dark red aura erupts from the grand staircase, and the whole room holds its breath. Every instinct in our hero's body screams as he recognizes the terrifying presence looming above. The sheer pressure of the Roderick's power brings everyone to their knees. Looking at Roderick, a chill runs down Bro's spine as he realizes just how outclassed he really is. Whispers erupt through the crowd, completely baffled that a Viscount's youngest son just humiliated the main house's thirdborn. Heavy boots step forward as the onlookers realize the grim truth. After a crushing defeat like that, the main family will demand blood. This isn't just a fight anymore. The stakes just got much bigger as the 8th-generation head of the Elmheim main house steps onto the battlefield. A slow, unhinged smirk creeps across the defeated Daryus's face, knowing his father is about to unleash hell. Aster stands his ground, locking eyes with the imposing figure of Duke Roderick. The sheer pressure radiating from Roderick makes everyone freeze. Surrounded by a fierce red aura, our hero realizes he is staring down Duke Roderick A. Elmheim himself. Desperate for revenge, the defeated Daryus points a trembling finger at Bro, begging his father to intervene. A malicious grin spreads across the loser's face as he demands the main house crush this so-called filthy mutt. Expecting his dad to unleash hell on his opponent, the kneeling boy pleads for absolute punishment. Before anyone can react, a blade violently pierces straight through flesh and pins a hand to the floor. Staring down at his skewered palm, the Daryus freezes. Nobody saw that coming. Agonizing screams echo through the hall, leaving the bystanders completely horrified by the sudden bloodshed. Towering over his own flesh and blood, Roderick coldly demands to know why a loser is smiling, disgusted that his son disgraced their prestigious family name. Frantic shouts erupt from Viscount in the crowd, desperately begging the Duke to halt the madness. Without hesitation, the ruthless father brings his weapon down for a final, crippling strike, declaring his son unworthy of ever holding a blade again. Out of nowhere, a massive metallic clang rings out, and the whole room holds its breath. Both men snap their attention toward the deafening impact, completely caught off guard. At the last possible second, Aster steps in and catches the Duke's descending blade with his own, completely defying the head of the main house. Standing over the terrified Daryus, Aster makes it clear that this beatdown was strictly about demanding an apology for his sister. Our boy doesn't back down, looking his uncle dead in the eye and demanding the punishment wait until the apology is given. Roderick's expression darkens, and everyone feels genuine fear as he mocks the kid's orphan origins, questioning his place in the Elmheim family. With absolute confidence, our boy declares his true worth, proudly claiming his title as the Viscount's son and honoring the knightly pride his adoptive father instilled in him. Glancing over his shoulder, the furious Duke realizes they have an audience watching the entire confrontation from the balcony above. Pointing his blade with glowing red eyes, Roderick accuses the kid of needlessly tarnishing the main house's reputation and insulting the pride of 12,000 knights. As 3 mysterious figures watch from the balcony above, Roderick lays down the law, making it crystal clear that this is no simple playground scrap. Roderick brings up a dark history, revealing that the boy's father once paid for his disloyalty with his own arm. Cold steel rests inches from his throat as our hero is forced to answer what price he will pay for his actions. Unfazed by the threat, the young swordsman calmly begins his defiant response. Bro explains that this was a legitimate duel, a necessary strike to defend the Viscount house from blatant insults. The sheer audacity of the response leaves Roderick completely stunned. Throwing the Duke's own philosophy right back in his face, our guy declares that a true swordsman must avenge himself, refusing to surrender even a single finger. Up on the balcony, Alphen leans over the railing, her face pale with anxiety as the tension reaches a boiling point. Meanwhile, a blue-haired spectator cannot help but laugh, utterly baffled that a 10-year-old kid is standing his ground against the head of the family. Roderick's eye glows a menacing red as he silently processes the sheer weight of the young boy's words. Accepting the challenge, the Duke draws his blade and acknowledges the kid's resolve. Stepping forward with heavy boots, Roderick commands his young opponent to draw his weapon if he truly wants to fight. Caught completely off guard, R grips his hilt as the sudden aggression registers. Before our boy can even react, a lethal strike closes the distance. The massive energy attack connects with such force that it obliterates the ground, destroying everything in its path. Watching from above, the sight alone is enough to drain the color from Alphen's face. Something inside Viscount snaps, and he screams the Duke's name in pure unadulterated fury. Without hesitation, the Viscount forward and slams Roderick with a devastating glowing strike. Sparks fly as Roderick catches the incoming blade mid-swing, the shockwave cracking the air between them. Pushed onto the defensive, Viscount leap forward and run to his son. Desperate, Viscount charges through the thick smoke, screaming out for Aster. But as the dust settles, the cratered floor is completely empty. A cold sweat breaks out on Viscount's face as panic sets in. It should have been impossible, yet Aster stands amidst the rubble, battered but refusing to stay down. Aster says nothing, just staring with a silence that feels worse than any scream. The mighty Roderick finally breaks his gaze, turning away from the battered youth. Without another word, Roderick strides off, leaving the tense standoff behind him. Adrenaline fading, everything catches up to our boy as his legs give out completely. The Viscount lunges forward, catching the falling hero before he hits the ground. Through a blood-stained smile, Bro weakly confirms he kept his promise and protected what mattered most. Overcome with emotion, the father looks down at his son, declaring his stand absolutely magnificent. Meanwhile, Roderick ascends the grand staircase, approaching the onlookers above. The bearded man doesn't hold back, calling out the Duke's brutal display as completely childish. Still, the spectator admits it was a necessary compromise to protect the main house's fragile reputation. Surviving a direct clash with the great Duke while making bold declarations, our guy just cemented himself as a rising star. These political implications are massive. Our hero just pulled off the ultimate social debut, even if it risked tearing the entire Elmheim family apart. Roderick's expression darkens as he predicts a massive storm approaching, an age of upheaval that will shatter the world itself. Back on the ground, Alphen rushes in, desperate to help support the battered victor. The scene shifts to the country yard under the shining Buell sky, where some trainee nobles stand completely baffled. Without hesitation, Aster leaps forward and slams a man in a black shirt with a single devastating blow. The defeated opponent can't help but smile, completely impressed by the sheer skill on display. Our boy just casually stands there, barely breaking a sweat as the respect rolls in. Watching from the sidelines, the bowl-cut man starts connecting the dots out loud. Realizing that a 10-year-old training this relentlessly is downright terrifying, word spreads quickly as they recount how our hero completely humiliated Duke Roderick's third son. For the branch family members who have suffered under the main house's thumb, this victory is the ultimate refreshing payback. Inside Bro's mind, one thought echoes. He already proved his overwhelming presence at the sword dance gathering. He hopes that display of power will finally silence the critics calling his Viscount family a disgrace to the Elmheim name. But this isn't just a fight anymore, because his true crosshairs are locked firmly on the main Elmheim family. A barrage of attacks tears through the man in the black shirt's defenses, each faster and harder than the last, as Aster regrets not testing his absolute limits back at the gathering. Deep down, our guy knows the bitter truth. In his current state, taking down Roderick is completely impossible. Leaping high into the air, he realizes that wing crests are nothing more than a gauge for raw, hidden magic potential. That frustration is real. All that innate magic is utterly useless if he can't properly control the overwhelming power of the 7 wings. Aster desperately wishes for a battlefield where he can unleash his full might without the fear of losing control. With one clean strike, Aster sends the shadowy attacker crashing into the ground. A fierce golden light burns in Aster's eyes, signaling a resolve that will never be broken. Standing amidst a pile of groaning bodies, our hero demands to know if anyone else is brave enough to step up. Hearing a familiar voice from behind, he turns to see someone noting his intense workout. Alphen casually strolls up, teasing him about his lack of restraint before dropping the news that his father is asking for him. Without hesitation, Bro acknowledges the summons and immediately prepares to leave the battered courtyard behind. Pausing mid-step, something about her attire catches his attention. She glances back with a questioning hum, wondering what caught his eye. Our boy points out the unusual choice of clothing, reminding her that she used to hate wearing that specific gear because it wasn't cute enough. Gesturing thoughtfully, she admits that watching his relentless dedication inspired her to finally seek balance and change her own ways. Suddenly, a wooden blade is thrust right into his face, catching him completely off guard. Leveling her weapon with a playful smirk, Alphen demands that he keep her company for a spar the second he returns. Aster simply smiles warmly, clearly happy to see her newfound motivation. He playfully begs her to go easy on him as they briefly cross wooden swords in the dusty yard. Moments later, a sharp knock echoes against heavy, ornate wooden doors. Stepping into the quiet office, Aster formally announces his arrival to Viscount Highfried waiting at the desk. Getting straight to the point, Aster asks why he was summoned, prompting the Viscount to seriously request that he take a seat. Our hero settles into the heavy chair, ready to hear what this is all about. The patriarch leans forward, reflecting on the 10 long years that have passed since they first welcomed him into the family. Placing a small object on the desk, the old man admits he originally planned to wait until the boy was older. A brilliant red gem ring rests on a blue cushion, leaving Bro completely baffled as to what it means. Looking his son dead in the eye, the old man reveals the ring is the ultimate symbol of succession. Out of nowhere, the patriarch declares him the sole heir to the Viscount house. And the whole room holds its breath. Breaking the heavy silence, the father explains that their noble house is currently sitting in a highly precarious position. Even as a branch family bearing the Elmheim name, they are still lords with a massive territory to protect. With shadowy figures looming in his mind, the patriarch stresses that the seat of power cannot remain vacant forever. Processing the massive responsibility, Aster immediately questions how his sisters are going to react to this shift in power. Closing his eyes, the old man reveals his plan to announce the decision when the girls return from night school in exactly 3 days. Just the thought of Sister Marfa and Sister Kudo sends a chill down our guy's spine, picturing their intimidating auras. Shadows fall over his face as he predicts Kudo's explosive anger over the news. He knows exactly why she resents him. Simply for being born male and happening to be blessed with 7 wings, a truth that makes the old man let out a heavy sigh. Aster shoots up from his chair, flat out refusing to take on such a massive responsibility. Turning his back, our hero admits his own fatal flaws. He can't even control his magic, and still carries the guilt of nearly killing his own sibling. The young man stands firm in his decision, confessing he lacks the confidence to ever face his furious sister and convince her otherwise. Viscount just sits there calmly, openly questioning if our boy is truly as immature as he claims to be. Leaning forward with a mysterious wooden box, the old man reveals he originally planned to gift a ring for the sword dance gathering. But as he slides the lid open, he suggests this alternative prize might be exactly what the kid actually needs. Our hero's golden eye widens in pure curiosity as he catches a glimpse of what's hidden inside. With absolute reverence, Viscount introduces the legendary weapon resting within, the magic sword Gram. A breathtaking glowing blade sits in the velvet lining, an artifact specifically designed to devour magic and control the overwhelming power of the 7 wings. Shifts to a sunlit forest clearing, where the two arrive to put this mythical weapon to the ultimate test. Calling the Viscount, Aster questions why they had to trek all the way out here instead of using the training hall, only to be told it's a necessary precaution. A sudden flashback proves exactly why. Bro has a notorious track record of completely shattering his weapons and destroying training rooms. Gripping the hilt, Viscount reveals that this heirloom was brought straight from the main house, reserved exclusively for the eldest Elmheim sons. Wasting no time, the veteran bites down and rips the wrapping straight off the hilt to demonstrate its true potential. Aster cannot process what he is seeing, as none of the situation makes any sense. Viscount Highfried explains that this peculiar weapon is completely missing its physical blade, leaving Aster baffled. In an instant, the Viscount channels his own mana into the hilt, erupting into a massive glowing red edge that leaves Aster stunned. He explains that this artifact is forged entirely by the wielder's own magical potential, making it a weapon of limitless possibilities. Without hesitation, the old man leaps forward and slams the magical construct down with a single devastating blow. The force is so overwhelming that the resulting shockwave completely obliterates a massive path straight through the dense forest. But there's a terrifying catch. The Viscount warns that anyone with mediocre power will be drained dry by this cursed artifact. Holding out the empty hilt, he challenges our hero to see if he has what it takes to wield it. Aster makes a vow right then and there, firmly gripping the handle to test his own limits. Suddenly, golden energy begins to surge around his hand as he attempts to pour his mana into the weapon. Inside his mind, one thought echoes. The blade is actively pulling the magic out of him entirely on its own. A colossal beam of crimson light suddenly pierces the heavens, catching the attention of everyone miles away. 2 nearby guards are completely baffled by the spectacle, arguing over whether a comet just crashed or if something just launched into orbit. Meanwhile, Alphen overhears the commotion as the soldiers try to make sense of the anomaly. She starts connecting the dots out loud, and immediately realizes exactly who is responsible for that monstrous display. Back in the forest, Aster casually sits in a crater, admiring the sheer power of his newly awakened weapon. Looking dead serious, the the Viscount begins to explain the true weight of the situation. Staring up at the swirling heavens in absolute awe, the older man drops a massive bombshell. This terrifying phenomenon erupting above them is entirely Aster's doing. Our boy listens intently as he learns that a seven-wing crest has never existed in the entire history of the Elmheim bloodline. The Viscount makes it clear, if Aster can master this unprecedented energy, he will eventually eclipse even the strongest six-winged fighters in existence. A fiery vision of a Roderick flashes in his mind, fueling his determination to surpass the legends of his past. However, such overwhelming strength comes with a heavy price, as power of this magnitude always breeds inevitable conflict. Once the world discovers the existence of those seven wings, a massive target will be painted on his back. Greed and envy will surround him, with countless enemies scheming to manipulate his newfound abilities for their own gain. And those who can't control him will undoubtedly send assassins to eliminate the threat before he grows too strong. Reaching out a hand, the old man offers his guidance so our hero won't have to face that dark future alone. With a stern expression, he urges Aster to start building his strength right now before the wolves come knocking at their door. Gripping the extended hand firmly, Bro makes a silent vow to himself. He refuses to ever live a miserable, powerless life like he did in his past. Looking up with absolute resolve, he thanks his father and swears to master the seven wings no matter what it takes. 3 days later, the scene shifts as the Viscount and Viscountess gather in the grand hall with Alfin standing near them. Standing in the doorway, Kudryavka and Marfa finally make their long-awaited return to the estate. Clearing her throat, Kudryavka tries to draw everyone's attention. Throwing her arms wide open, she enthusiastically demands a welcome-home hug from her dear little sisters. But the two little sisters completely ignore her, rushing straight into Marfa's arms instead. Left standing awkwardly by herself, Kudryavka wonders aloud why she's being left out of the affection. Clinging tightly to Marfa, the younger siblings bluntly explain that their big sister always ruins their hair. Sweating nervously, Kudryavka crosses her arms and weakly defends her perfectly mastered knightly etiquette. Suddenly her eyes lock onto the Alfin standing quietly nearby. Without hesitation, Kudryavka leaps forward and squishes the poor girl in a suffocating embrace. Alfin desperately struggles to break free as her older sister aggressively rubs cheeks with her. Amidst the chaotic reunion, Marfa turns back to the Viscount to ask about Aster's whereabouts. A heavy silence falls over the parents as they awkwardly avoid making eye contact. Catching on to the sudden shift in mood, Kudryavka's playful demeanor instantly vanishes. Meanwhile, a massive pillar of crimson energy violently erupts from the earth somewhere far away. Standing at the epicenter of the swirling vortex, our boy pants heavily while gripping a glowing red blade. Gritting his teeth in pure frustration, Aster curses his own limits, realizing he still cannot pull the technique off. The young swordsman manages to manifest a magical blade, but keeping its volatile energy in check pushes him to his absolute limit. Staring at the swirling crimson aura, he can't help but wonder how their father wields this kind of power so effortlessly. Suddenly, Kudryavka strolls into the clearing, casually interrupting his intense training session. Surprised by her sudden return, our boy turns around, only to get scolded for not greeting his big sister properly. A playful smirk crosses her face as she teases him for being so distant. Kudryavka doesn't hold back, pointing out that the entire night school is buzzing about his recent achievements at the sword dance gathering, and noting just how proud their father must be. Feeling a bit embarrassed, our guy quickly deflects the praise, reminding her that she's the one excelling on countless missions despite still being a trainee. He even highlights her shiny new hardware, mentioning she was the sole knight to earn the prestigious honor medal this year. Tension fills the air as Kudryavka looks away, stating that such accomplishments are the bare minimum if she wants to inherit their father's position. Her expression hardens as she confronts him directly, demanding to know if he rejected the heir title just out of pity for her. Panic flashes across our hero's face as he realizes their father leaked the news, frantically explaining that he simply doesn't feel qualified for the role yet. Taking slow, deliberate steps forward, Kudryavka's frustration boils over as she mutters about how cruel both he and their father are being. Something inside Kudryavka snaps as she draws her blade, furious that they would trample all over her lifelong dream. Caught completely off guard, our boy freezes in pure disbelief. Before he can even process the sudden attack, Kudryavka lunges forward and unleashes a blindingly fast strike. With a deafening boom, she unleashes a massive shockwave that tears straight through the earth toward Aster. At the last possible second, our boy leaps backward and narrowly avoids the devastating strike. Landing on his feet, our hero frantically demands to know why his own sister is suddenly trying to take his head off. Standing amidst the settling dust, Kudryavka announces that it's time for a long-overdue sibling combat test. A confident smirk creeps across her face as she warns him that the warm-up is officially over. Desperate, our boy begs her to hold on, pointing out that his weapon isn't even fully forged yet. She doesn't even flinch, coldly asking if he plans to use that pathetic excuse against a real enemy on the battlefield. The harsh reality of her words hits Bro like a ton of bricks. Dropping into a low stance, Kudryavka promises to absolutely crush him if he dares to hold back. In an instant, Kudryavka vanishes from Aster's eyes. Realizing she was not joking, our boy prepares for his defense. Without hesitation, she leaps through the air to deliver a lethal downward strike while he's still struggling to control his own magic. Left with zero options, our hero ignites his blade with crimson energy and barely blocks the incoming assault. Sparks fly as their blades lock together, and panic sets in as our boy realizes his sister might actually murder him right here. Raw kinetic energy from their collision triggers a chain of massive explosions that completely decimate the surrounding forest. Surrounded by a crackling blue aura, Kudryavka gleefully praises his sharp reflexes while boasting about her upgraded night school techniques. Gritting his teeth under the pressure, Aster struggles to hold his ground as his sister mocks his pathetic excuse for a weapon. With one clean strike, she sends him crashing backward, screaming that he has absolutely zero control over his own magic. The sheer force of her assault sends our hero skidding violently across the dirt. Sweating and strained, Bro finally manages to catch his breath, calling out his sister Kudo for her relentless, merciless attacks. Inside his mind, one thought echoes. She has always been this fiercely aggressive. In their childhood, her deep-seated resentment started over his exclusive inheritance rights as the only son. He explains that his superior wing crest made him the special child of the family, fueling her bitter jealousy even further. Our boy realizes early on that this storm of a sister who picks a fight over anything is his absolute natural enemy. Snapping back to the present, a devastating impact tears through the battlefield as their blades collide once again. A golden eye narrows in intense focus as he braces himself for her signature Aster technique. Massive shockwaves tear through the forest as their auras erupt into a blinding explosion of blue and crimson light. Furious and glowing with cyan power, Kudo screams that he is completely unfit to be the next head of the family. Meanwhile, Marfa watches from a distant window, asking her father if leaving those two alone was really a smart idea. She starts connecting the dots out loud. And the picture isn't pretty, warning that this sibling rivalry could easily end with a corpse. Unbothered by the lethal stakes, Viscount Highfried calmly dismisses Marfa's worries, claiming the reckless battle is just a sign of healthy rivalry. Looking down with a resigned sigh, Marfa hopes her father knows what he is doing. Changing the subject, she presses the patriarch on the real reason they were pulled out of night school, knowing deep down it wasn't just to discuss the family heir. The old man doesn't say a word, simply dropping a mysterious object onto his desk with a heavy thud. Shock freezes her in place as she stares at the sealed letter. He reveals the truth. It's an official summons straight from the Elmheim main house. Turns out, the shadowy elders running the core family suddenly want a face-to-face meeting with their grandchildren. Realizing the gravity of the situation, she admits this is a massive escalation. And then the patriarch reveals a terrifying possibility. They might actually lose Aster to the main family. Back in the forest, the stakes just got much bigger as the two siblings violently clash blades. Swinging his crimson-coated sword, our boy screams that he already rejected the successor title. But his sister isn't having it, roaring that his refusal is exactly what pisses her off. With one brutal strike, the red-haired warrior sends a shockwave through our boy's guard, forcing him to brace against the crushing weight. Inside our boy's mind, one thought echoes. Blocking her feels like trying to stop a giant troll swinging a massive hammer. Refusing to be overpowered, our hero tightens his grip as his blade surges with red energy. At the last possible second, Aster deflects the monstrous strike and slips past Kudryavka's guard. Desperate to reason with her, the young swordsman swings his crimson-charged blade while urging her to listen. Kudryavka just smirks, taunting him for trying to run away from the clash. A massive explosion of blue and white energy erupts, sending our boy flying back from the sheer force. Coughing up blood, our boy staggers to his feet, completely baffled by her monstrous physical strength. She doesn't let up, lecturing him that relying solely on a blade makes him nothing more than a third-rate fighter. Stepping firmly onto the cracked earth, she adds that even throwing magic into the mix only bumps him up to second-rate. With absolute confidence, she declares that true mastery requires perfectly blending both sword and sorcery. Her gaze turns cold as she looks down at him, calling Aster a complete disappointment. This power system is simple. She explains how the number of wing crests dictates a warrior's total magical capacity. Two fingers go up as she points out a glaring fact. With her 5 wings, she should be vastly inferior to his 7. She criticizes our hero for constantly dodging direct clashes, instead of using his superior firepower. That mocking smile returns as she questions if he really has that little faith in his own abilities. Then she hits him where it hurts, asking if he's terrified of losing control just like he did 3 years ago. Aster freezes. The accusation hits him hard, leaving him completely stunned. Deep down, Aster realizes the truth. He has been subconsciously putting a limiter on his own power this entire time. Looking at his reflection in the blade, he finally connects the dots, understanding his sword is unstable because he is suppressing his magic. Charges up a crackling blue strike, Kudryavka bitterly declaring that our hero possesses everything she ever wanted. Gripping her weapon tight, she scolds him for blindly wasting his immense potential and letting arrogance take over. Without hesitation, Kudryavka leaps forward and demands he hand all that power over to her. Something shifts in our boy's eyes as he tightens his grip on the glowing hilt. A massive explosion of blue and red energy erupts as he meets her devastating blow head-on. That should have been impossible. She stares in absolute shock as he completely repels her full-force strike. With a slow smirk creeping across his face, Aster thanks his sister for finally waking him up. Surging through the smoke, Bro charges straight at her without even bothering to form a proper blade. Bracing for impact, his sister grits her teeth, knowing damn well he hasn't run out of juice just yet. Our guy unleashes a fierce downward strike, tapping into the unprecedented inexhaustible well of magic hidden within the 7 wings. Knowing he can't properly control this massive power yet, Aster executes a brilliant strategy. Abandoning the blade entirely, to focus every ounce of his magic into a single explosive moment of impact. Unfazed, his sister flashes a confident smirk, mocking his half-baked attempt at a tactical counter. But our hero's expression darkens, making it clear he didn't get this second chance at life just to throw it away. In an instant, a glowing red crest erupts on his back, signaling that he is about to fully unleash his hidden power. Aster reflects on his past life, admitting that a loving family and true power were things he could never grasp no matter how hard he fought. The red-haired sister freezes, completely baffled by his sudden mention of a second life. Without hesitation, our boy leaps forward and slams his blade down, unleashing a devastating wave of crimson aura. A barrage of raw power tears through the air. Caught completely off guard, his opponent can only watch as the crackling energy threatens to consume her. At the last possible second, the overwhelming strike inexplicably dissipates right before smashing into her glowing blue guard. Staring her down with glowing eyes, our hero declares that the kid gloves are officially coming off. With one final earth-shattering strike, Aster ends it, engulfing the entire battlefield in an explosive burst of red magic. In a flash, the fiery destruction vanishes, and Kudryavka jolts upright in bed, gasping for air like she just cheated death. Disoriented by the peaceful sunlight streaming through the window, she struggles to process how she ended up back in her own bedroom. Suddenly, a gentle voice breaks the silence, noting that the sleeping beauty has finally returned to the land of the living. Standing calmly by the curtains is Sister Marfa, offering a warm smile to the bewildered girl. Panic sets in as the sister shoots up from the mattress, desperately demanding to know what happened to her duel with Aster. Marfa casually explains the aftermath, revealing a flashback of an exhausted Aster carrying his unconscious sibling all the way home. To save her pride, Aster covers for Kudryavka, telling everyone she simply dozed off mid-fight due to travel fatigue. Sitting up in bed, Kudryavka realizes something about that explanation just does not add up. A sudden flashback hits her, recalling the terrifying final moment of the match where she was certain Aster had cut her down. Realization washes over her. Our boy actually dispelled his magic blade right before the fatal impact. Only the residual energy from his swing passed through her body, leaving her completely unharmed. She rationalizes that there's absolutely no way her own flesh and blood would ever intentionally take her life. Yet the sheer monstrous killing intent radiating from his glowing red eyes in that split second felt entirely real. Amusement replaces fear as a slow smirk creeps across her face, reflecting on her infuriating little brother. Gripping her sword hilt tight, she demands Sister Marfa tell her exactly where Aster is hiding. Her competitive spirit flares up as she hoists her blade, vowing to go all out in a proper rematch. Calmly standing by the window, Marfa casually drops the news that our hero has already left the estate. The fiery sibling freezes. Nobody saw that coming. Marfa explains that Aster was urgently summoned by the main house and just departed with their father, baffled that nobody bothered to tell her. Completely stunned, she can't process what she's hearing. None of this makes sense. Outraged screams echo across the entire courtyard as the realization of being completely left out sinks in. Meanwhile, a lone horse-drawn carriage makes its way down the cobblestone streets, carrying Aster toward his next destination. Inside the carriage, the young boy quietly watches the world pass by. His father breaks the silence, explaining that their destination holds the Elder Lords, the true shadow rulers and former heads who pull the strings of the Elmheim family. Even in retirement, these fixers wield tremendous influence from their imposing fortress. With a heavy sigh, the old man admits his deep concern. These elites haven't shown a shred of interest in our hero since his adoption, making this sudden summons highly suspicious. Aster doesn't miss a beat, calmly pointing out that his recent stunt at the sword dance gathering is definitely the trigger. He starts connecting the dots out loud. And the picture isn't pretty, noting that the Elmheim elders value their pristine reputation far more than money or human life. Anyone foolish enough to stain that legacy gets tossed straight into the beast cages as monster feed. A chill runs down the old man's spine as he asks where his adopted son could have possibly heard such a dark rumor. Brushing it off with a slight smile, Bro casually mentions he's already prepared to face vigilante justice or outright exile. Changing the subject, his father asks if slipping away without a proper goodbye to his siblings was really the right move. Closing his eyes, our guy reassures him that his departure was perfectly timed with his sister's arrival anyway. Smiling slightly, Aster jokes that Sister Kudo will probably enjoy the peace and quiet since she absolutely despises him. Resting a hand on his hilt, he admits that clashing with her actually helped him master his blade. Our boy doesn't ask, tells his father that his connection to the Seven Wings has deepened, strictly ordering the old man not to mount a rescue mission no matter what happens next. Staring straight ahead, the young swordsman declares his readiness to survive alone, leaving the Viscount completely speechless. Out of nowhere, Kudryavka's loud voice interrupts the carriage ride, yelling at Aster for acting so high and mighty. Aster freezes. Nobody saw that coming. The red-haired woman, Sister Kudo, suddenly appears at the window, leaving her brother completely baffled as to why she is here. Without hesitation, she leaps onto the side of the moving vehicle, prompting their father to ask in disbelief if she ran the entire way. Swinging inside, Kudo immediately scolds them for being so cruel as to leave without saying a single word to her. She makes it clear that she knows about the main house summoning him, an honor neither she nor Sister Marfa have ever received, while their father stresses that he simply cannot bring her along. Sitting down with a heavy sigh, the older sister admits she fully understands her role is to stay behind and watch over the estate. Her expression darkens as she points out the grim reality. A summons like this means the situation is incredibly dangerous. An ominous view of the main castle flashes as Kudo voices her deepest fear, that our boy might not return alive. Bro just casually brushes it off as an exaggeration, though he admits with a smile that coming back safely is definitely not guaranteed. Pointing a fierce finger right in his face, Kudo aggressively declares just how much she dislikes him. Listening in stunned silence, our guy hears her list off every reason for her resentment, from his gender and his 7 wings to the special treatment he always receives. Staring out at the sky, she confesses that she hates how he acts so grown up and is already stronger than his older sister. Suddenly, her tone softens as she reveals the truth. Despite all that bitter resentment, he is still her precious family. Looking down at the 2 siblings, the father watches quietly as Kudryavka firmly reminds Aster that he will always be her little brother. Rising to her feet, the red-haired woman demands that Aster return safely so they can settle their score with another match. Flashing a confident smile over her shoulder, she playfully warns him that she won't let him just win and run away. Without hesitation, she leaps right out of the moving carriage and lands on the cobblestone street. Baffled by her sudden exit, our hero stares out the window while the Viscount beside him chuckles, noting what a great rival she is. A soft smile crosses his face as he silently thanks his sister for everything. Watching her wave goodbye against the setting sun, Bro makes a quiet vow to himself that he will definitely return. The scene shifts as the two of them arrive before massive iron gates, immediately greeted by a formal voice welcoming Lord Hyfried back. Lined up at strict attention, a squad of armored guards announces that the elder lords are already waiting for them inside. Trying to brush off the escort, the Viscount states he knows the path, but the guards firmly block their way, making it clear they have strict orders to bring both of them in together. Escorted under heavy guard, our guy quickly pieces together that this summons isn't just a friendly family visit to dote on a grandson. An amused smirk creeps across his face. He's completely unbothered by the underlying hostility. Staring up at the imposing, shadowy castle under a blood-red sky, our boy reflects on how nostalgic it feels to be back at his old home. Passing by a balcony that overlooks young men sparring in the courtyard below, the old man begins to offer some serious advice. Lord Hyfried desperately urges our hero to keep his cool today no matter what the elders say, but the young man coldly replies that his patience depends entirely on them. Catching that thinly veiled threat, the Viscount's expression drops into deep concern. Glancing over his shoulder, Aster listens as Lord Hyfried warns that the very people they are meeting are the root of the problem. Meanwhile, out in the courtyard, our boy noticed Daryus' absence, but then he casually noting that a wrecked dominant arm means he won't be returning to the sparring grounds anytime soon. Suddenly, Aster's golden eyes focus as Viscount sharply asked if he's even paying attention to the warning. Our boy quickly plays it off with a smile, agreeing without hesitation as he and the older man surrender their blades to the armored guards. Handing over his sword, our hero promises to stay completely silent today, adding that his sister specifically ordered him to make it back home in one piece. Heavy wooden doors slowly creak open, revealing the daunting trial that lies ahead. Stepping into the grand hall, the guards formally announce Lord Hyfried and his son to the imposing figures waiting inside. As they walk down the long red carpet, an unseen voice echoes through the room, noting that it has been over a decade since their last visit. The speaker is finally revealed, an intimidating older man with a thick gray beard, who addresses Hyfried directly as his own grandson. Dropping to one knee, Viscount Hyfried respectfully greets the patriarch as the sixth head. Bro follows suit, bowing his head and formally addressing the seated patriarch as his great and revered grandfather. Inside Aster's mind, one thought echoes. This man is the true monster lurking in Elmheim's shadow. With one eye glowing a sinister red, Zenith Elmheim, the sixth head of the main family, stares them down from his throne. Our guy quickly scans the room, identifying the former heads of the branch families and all the top brass serving under the Elmheim banner. Taking note of a smirking blue-haired man, Aster realizes he recognizes a few of these dangerous faces from the recent gathering. Aster glances around the room, quickly realizing that Duke Roderick is nowhere to be found. Zenith catches the boy's wandering eyes and bluntly confirms the commander's absence. The patriarch explains that as commander of the Royal Knights, Roderick has no time for mundane affairs, leaving the old warhorses to handle the tedious paperwork. Reflecting on his past life, our boy realizes he never even had the chance to meet this man before, making the current situation completely uncharted territory. Gathering this many top executives without the current head present proves that the retired patriarch still wields massive influence over the family. Hyfried narrows his eyes, cautiously asking what exactly these so-called mundane affairs entail. A dark chuckle escapes the sixth head as he suggests they already know exactly why they were summoned. Bringing up the recent sword dance gathering, the old man specifically calls out the massive mess their little pet mutt left behind. Even though Hyfried argues that Roderick already settled the matter, Zenith coldly dismisses that intervention as nothing more than a public stunt. Other executives chime in, declaring that adopting a child of unknown origin was a massive mistake that permanently stained the prestigious Elmheim brand. They deliver their brutal verdict. Because the boy dared to bare his fangs at the main house, he will be exiled, and Lord Hyfried will face severe punishment for his failure. Desperate, our guy leaps to his feet and begs them to stop, insisting that he acted entirely on his own. He tries to take the full brunt of the blame, frantically shouting that his adoptive father had absolutely nothing to do with the incident. But Hyfried says nothing, simply closing his eyes and silently accepting the crushing weight of the council's judgment. That heavy silence hits Aster hard, leaving him completely stunned by his father's quiet resignation. The council completely dismisses Aster's desperate plea, mocking the boy for daring to interrupt his superiors. Rising from his seat, the head executive's voice booms across the hall as he reminds everyone of the massive military might they control. He explains that while the Elmheim name carries immense weight, their ranks are deeply fractured from within. Ambition runs rampant, with countless rivals waiting in the shadows to tear each other apart for the throne. Tension spikes as the old man implies that traitors are sitting right alongside them. Planting his cane firmly on the ground, he demands absolute proof of loyalty to ensure the organization's safety. Out of nowhere, a glowing blade hilt is pressed directly against Hyfried's throat, and the whole room holds its breath. Ruthlessly bringing up Hyfried's past failure, the leader reminds him of the time he disgraced their entire faction. Forcing the kneeling man to relive his trauma, the executive points out that Roderick severed his arm in this exact room. With glowing red eyes, the Grand Master issues a horrifying ultimatum. Hyfried must execute his own son. Our boy freezes in pure terror, completely paralyzed by the monstrous command. Offered a twisted pardon in exchange for murder, Hyfried doesn't even hesitate to reject the deal. Hearing his adoptive father declare he would rather die than harm him, Aster is overwhelmed with emotion. Staring down at the defiant knight, the leader's expression remains unreadable as he processes the rejection. A heavy thud echoes through the chamber as the executive prepares to deliver his final, lethal judgment. The central executive does not hold back, summoning a swarm of shadow assassins and declaring that every single member of the Viscount family will die today. As the shadowy blades clash against the father's defenses, the old leader gloats that the Viscount house will be completely erased by nightfall. Seeing his adoptive father pushed to the brink by the relentless assault, the young man refuses to just stand by and watch. Our hero can't resist mocking the old man, asking exactly what he's so terrified of. Stunned by the sheer audacity, the central executive stammers in pure disbelief. Standing amidst a sea of drawn swords, Bro calls out their pathetic fear, daring them to either exile or execute him if they're so terrified of their own attack dog. He violently yanks at his collar, issuing a dark warning about what will happen if they dare to lay a single finger on his family. The Viscount's eyes widen in pure shock, realizing exactly what his son is about to do. With a dramatic toss of his shirt, our guy casually apologizes to his father, admitting he was never any good at keeping his mouth shut anyway. Every armored guard freezes in absolute terror, unable to process the impossible sight before them. A glowing red crest burns brightly across his bare back, radiating an overwhelming monstrous energy. Unleashing his true aura, our boy declares that if they touch his family, the legendary Seven Wings will become Elmheim's worst nightmare. His glowing yellow eye pierces right through them, leaving a chilling final command to think very carefully about their next move. Zenith, the sixth head, is completely rattled, screaming that a seven-wing crest is absolutely impossible. The rest of the Elder Lords are losing their minds, realizing this mark hasn't been seen on a human in centuries. Even the most skeptical council members are sweating bullets, unable to deny the undeniable truth. Gathering his composure, Zenith locks his gaze onto our hero with deadly seriousness. The old man demands to know if Aster truly grasps the massive consequences of revealing that mark right here, right now. A slow smirk creeps across Bro's face, casually joking that more wings just means more people freaking out. Out of nowhere, a blue-haired lord bursts into laughter, clapping his hands like he's watching a comedy act. Waving off the annoyed glares from his peers, the newcomer leans back and tells them to carry on with the show. Ignoring the disruption, Zenith explains that wing crests were originally magic organs gifted by spirits. A detail that changes everything. For countless generations, humanity cultivated and deepened that borrowed strength to build their empires. But despite all their history and mythical bloodlines, no human has ever achieved the legendary seventh wing. The only beings to ever hold that overwhelming power were the original spirit clan themselves. Aster starts connecting the dots out loud, asking if this means he actually belongs to that mythical race. Zenith admits that if the crest is genuine, it changes everything. But the royal guards keep their weapons raised. Meanwhile, Viscount Highfried remains completely silent, stoically enduring the blades pressed against his own throat. Aster steps forward, making sure everyone knows exactly where he stands. Surrounded by blades, our hero lays down the law. He doesn't care about his origins, only if they are truly prepared to face his wrath. He casually points out that if Elmheim rejects him, plenty of rival knightly houses would kill to recruit a 7 wings. Staring Zenith down, Aster outlines the grim reality. Pushing him away would only hand their enemies a weapon capable of surpassing Duke Roderick himself. The sheer audacity of his words leaves the council members completely stunned. Inside his mind, one thought echoes. He has already lived through the devastating civil war that will soon tear this kingdom apart. To protect his adoptive family from that bloody future, Bro decides he has to take a massive risk right now to expose his true allies and enemies. Zenith just chuckles, questioning if the boy is really worth all this trouble. This old man openly challenges the authenticity of the crest, daring the kid to prove his mythical power. Without a hint of fear, the kid boldly taunts the 6th head to strike him down if he truly believes it's a bluff. Tension skyrockets as the threat of an all-out war hangs heavily in the air. Our boy knows he'd be easily wiped out if Elmheim got serious, but he clenches his fist, waiting to see if Zenith will take the bait. But what Aster doesn't know is that someone else has been watching this standoff with growing impatience. A mysterious blue-haired man finally interrupts the staring contest, casually pointing out that they are getting nowhere. With a sly smirk, the newcomer proposes a dangerous solution. Put the kid through a trial right here and now. Count Maze casually brushes off the outraged elders, asking if they aren't the least bit curious to see the legendary 7 wings in action. With a calculating gleam in his eye, the blue-haired noble points out that they can always execute the boy after the show. Turning his attention to Zenith, Maze practically dares the 6th head to produce a trial worthy of the greatest warrior clan. Our boy studies the smirking noble, quickly piecing together exactly what this unexpected intervention means. Deep down, Aster knows exactly what's happening. Maze is giving him a way out. Zenith doesn't back down from the challenge, tapping his staff and ordering the kid to follow him. The old man coldly declares that it's a grandfather's duty to discipline a disrespectful grandson. Moments later, the group arrives at a massive underground cage and our hero peers into the pitch-black abyss. Standing at the edge of the pit, Zenith explains that this dark bunker connects directly to the estate's subterranean waterways. Zenith's eyes glow with malice as he reveals the catch. The shelter is currently home to a ravenous magical beast and Aster has to kill it. Viscount Highfried sighs in frustration, scolding his adoptive son for recklessly exposing the forbidden crest. But Bro just casually shrugs it off, arguing that a power this flashy was bound to come out eventually, making this the perfect excuse. Despite the bravado, the Viscount's expression remains dead serious as he warns the boy not to underestimate what's down there. Without hesitation, Aster leaps forward and plunges into the dark abyss below. From the edge of the pit, Count Maze watches the descent with a deeply unsettling smile, eager to see the carnage unfold. Aster lands smoothly in the pitch-black arena, the sound of splashing water echoing through the cavern. But the darkness isn't an issue. His eyes glow a piercing yellow, cutting through the shadows with ease. Suddenly, our hero freezes as he spots something gruesome hidden in the gloom. Up above, Count Maze casually mocks the last victim who failed this trial, leaving nothing but a severed head behind. The true threat finally steps into the light. A massive blue-furred beast dripping with fresh blood. Gripping his broken sword, Aster prepares himself as the Count demands a better show than the last guy. A deafening roar echoes through the chamber, signaling the official start of this deadly trial. Staring down the towering creature, our boy realizes the dark rumors about the Elmheim family's secret pet were entirely true. For a fleeting moment, he actually feels a brief pang of pity for Daryus having to grow up in this house of horrors. However, sympathy won't keep him alive, and he tightens his grip as the beast prepares to lunge. At the last possible second, Aster ducks the strike from the beast and lands a clear blow to the beast. Watching from the grate above, the onlookers gasp in disbelief at his effortless evasion. Unfazed, Bro casually remarks that his older sister Kudryavka is way scarier than this overgrown mutt. This banter is cut short when the beast body begins to warp, erupting with ominous purple flames and writhing tentacles. Aster can't process what he is seeing. None of this makes sense. The beast's flesh splits wide open, revealing a grotesque, multi-eyed face writhing with tentacles. Our hero realizes with horror that this isn't just a monster. It's a full-blown undead abomination. Up above the arena, Viscount grips the metal grate in sheer panic, wondering why such a nightmare is lurking beneath the mansion. A sinister bearded elder chimes in, explaining that these foul creatures are naturally drawn to the stench of death and fresh corpses. He reveals that they captured the unkillable beast specifically to use as a brutal testing dummy for their fighters. With a dark chuckle, the bearded elder adds that the monster also serves as a highly convenient garbage disposal for unwanted bodies. A blonde-mustached knight sweats nervously, pointing out that even seasoned warriors struggle to subdue an undead. The knight demands to know if they are intentionally sending the Seven Wings boy to a pointless death, but the elder coldly replies that a crest without true power is utterly worthless. The elder's expression turns even more sinister as he calculates that Aster's death might actually be more useful to their twisted plans. Standing silently among the council, a blue-haired young man observes the deadly trial below. He narrows his eyes, remembering the bold threats our boy made just moments ago. Down in the pit, Aster unleashes a flurry of glowing energy slashes, while the blue-haired spectator silently dares him to survive. Despite landing clean hits, our hero quickly realizes his strikes are doing absolutely zero lasting damage. The creature's mangled flesh knits back together instantly, displaying a terrifying level of regeneration far beyond a normal undead. Aster tightens his grip on his blade, analyzing the grim reality that you can't easily kill something that's already dead. Aster knows the golden rule of hunting the undead. If you want to wipe these monsters off the map for good, you have to incinerate them in pure sunlight. Or, if sunlight isn't an option, purify the rotting corpse with a holy weapon. If neither of those tools are available, the golden rule of survival is simple: do not engage. Snapping out of his thought, our hero knows retreat is impossible, and relying on basic tactics won't prove the true value of his 7 wings. With his resolve hardened, Bro readies his blade, letting a massive surge of red energy envelop the steel to prove his worth. Without hesitation, Aster leaps forward and slams the creature with a single devastating blow, aiming to obliterate it with sheer overwhelming strength. When the dust settles, a heavy boot steps down into the cratered arena. Even the blonde guard up in the stands has to stop and stare, completely stunned by the monstrous magical output of the 7 wings. Other spectators press against the iron grates, frantically trying to see through the debris to confirm if the beast is truly dead. But high above the chaos, the elder observer simply stares down at the pit, his expression unreadable. Down below, our boy stands ready amidst the swirling dust, waiting for any sign of movement. Gazing down, the older man's eye glows a sinister red as he coldly mutters that the attack was nothing but a waste. Before anyone can react, a sudden blur of motion catches him completely off guard. A vicious strike of the beast slams down our boy to the ground, as rests his massive leg on Aster. The massive blue lion monster emerges from the smoke, roaring ferociously as it towers over its fallen prey. Watching from behind the metal bars, Viscount Hyfried screams out his adopted son's name in pure panic. But the blue-haired man calmly steps in and warns the Viscount not to ruin the spectacle by interfering. Furious and desperate, Hyfried demands to know if they are just supposed to stand by and watch the boy get slaughtered. A slow smirk creeps across the blue-haired man's face as he casually tells the older man to calm down. Crossing his arms, the man points out that our hero seems to have a hidden trump card left to play. Down in the arena, Aster flashes a confident smile, muttering that his plan is working perfectly. Even with the massive blue beast looming right over him, our boy casually notes that the monster looks a bit slimmer than before. In an instant, his body surges with energy as a swirling red aura envelops his blade. Without hesitation, Aster leaps forward and slams his glowing sword straight up into the monster's chest. The force is so overwhelming that the beast's defenses shatter on contact, sending dark blood erupting from its jaws. Something inside our hero snaps as he roars that he won't stop until the creature is dead. Relentless strike of mana vortex rains down on the beast without mercy, painting the arena in flashes of red. The memory hits Viscount Hyfried like a wave. He remembers that's the move he showed Aster once. Viscount Hyfried watches in absolute awe as a storm of red energy and black chains tears through the blue beast. Aster didn't just copy his technique, he evolved it into something terrifyingly unique. The mustached man screams a desperate warning as the ground beneath the light brown-haired man literally shatters. They need to move right now because the whole place is coming down. Up in the stands, the situation is deteriorating fast, as guards urge the elder lords to evacuate the crumbling arena. But Zenith, the 6th head of the council, freezes in place as a terrifying realization dawns on him. Down below, our hero flashes a confident smirk as he unleashes the full, devastating might of the 7 wings. The sheer force of the blast knocks blonde mustache man to the ground, leaving him completely baffled by the scale of the destruction. Peering over the shattered ledge, the stunned observers search the massive crater, wondering where the monstrous undead beast went. Zenith starts connecting the dots out loud. And the picture isn't pretty, explaining that the boy literally ground the immortal creature to dust. This wasn't some refined swordplay. Aster obliterated his target using nothing but the raw, overwhelming volume of his magical energy. For the first time in forever, our boy finally lets out a breath, standing victorious amidst the floating embers of his own attack. Still processing the spectacle, the elder turns to the Viscount, demanding to know if he had a hand in this monstrous display. Viscount Hyfried shakes his head, admitting he is just as horrified and awestruck by his son's explosive growth as the rest of them. Stepping forward with a confident smile, the blue-haired official formally asks the council if the young warrior has proven his worth. With his glowing red eyes fixed on the crater, Zenith makes it official. There is absolutely no one left who would dare object to the boy's strength. Leaning over the edge, the official calls out to the exhausted victor, proudly declaring that he has officially passed the deadly trial. Instructed to come back up, Bro just casually says it, as if he didn't just wipe out an immortal beast. His attack accidentally vaporized the only climbing chain. For all that overwhelming monstrous power, our boy is completely stranded. flashing an awkward grin as he begs for a simple rope to escape the crater. Sitting back in his chair, Zenith questions if this is truly the path the young warrior wants to take. Aster confirms his decision, explaining that joining the main house's succession would only make his dear cousins paranoid. Our boy insists his true place is with the Viscount's family, a statement that earns an amused chuckle from the Elder Lord. But Zenith isn't fooled for a second, easily spotting the raw ambition burning behind those golden eyes. Leaning in, the old man bluntly asks if the kid intends to turn his blade against Elmheim itself someday. Caught off guard, Aster tenses up as Zenith casually asks if Duke Roderick's head is his ultimate target. The Elder Lord waves off the tension, assuring the boy he isn't here to pry into his true intentions just yet. Baffled, our hero questions why a potential rebel wouldn't be treated as an immediate enemy. Zenith reveals that the council isn't united, and Roderick's iron grip has ruffled feathers. He admits that having a wild card like Aster to keep the Duke in check is actually highly convenient for their faction. However, the old monster issues a chilling warning, making sure the boy knows what will happen if he ever bares his fangs at him again. Done with the exhausting politics, Aster pushes through the heavy doors, muttering under his breath about the terrifying elder. Out in the grand hallway, Viscount Hyfried anxiously asks for the verdict, and Aster casually reveals he turned down the prestigious offer to join the main house. Viscount Hyfried can't process what he is hearing. Stepping forward, the blue-haired official simply notes that it's a shame, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. Count Maze doesn't beat around the bush, pointing out that our hero just threw away a life of absolute privilege by rejecting the main house. Aster immediately fires back, demanding to know why the official deliberately pushed a suggestion that ended up working in his favor. With a sly smirk, Maze casually admits he just wanted to mess with an annoyingly cocky kid, leaving our boy visibly irritated. Wrapping an arm around Aster's shoulder, the Count shifts the tone, making it clear that the Seven Wings title is now officially attached to his name. His gaze sharpens as he instructs the young warrior to look out at the surrounding crowd. The Grand Hall is crawling with ambitious nobles and military men, their minds already racing with dark plots to either control the boy or eliminate him entirely. Maze explains that the legendary crest carries tremendous value, meaning a massive target has just been painted on Aster's back. Never one to miss a beat, our hero glances over his shoulder and bluntly asks if the Count is planning to use him too. This direct accusation actually catches the seasoned politician off guard for a split second. Recovering quickly, Maze flashes a charming smile and reveals he sits on the Knight Academy board, making it his literal job to scout promising talent. Gesturing toward a stern-looking blonde officer across the room, he notes that the competition for recruits is fierce. Waving goodbye, the blue-haired noble cheerfully declares he'll be eagerly waiting for the day Aster finally enrolls. Watching the man walk away, Aster narrows his eyes, deciding it's way too early to trust someone whose motives are buried that deep. A familiar heavy hand rests on his shoulder as Viscount Hyfried gently suggests it's time to leave this viper's nest. Smiling warmly, the proud father insists that his sisters need to hear every single detail about his incredible performance today. Looking down at his heavily bandaged chest, Aster manages a nervous chuckle, knowing his mother is going to absolutely lose it when she sees the state he's in. Meanwhile, deep within the main estate, the captain of the knights kneels before his lord, delivering the grim news that Daryus was killed during Zenith's brutal trial. The man on the throne, Duke Roderick, doesn't even flinch at the loss, instead immediately shifting the focus to how Aster handled his summons with the elders. Disgusted by the Duke's complete lack of empathy for his own flesh and blood, the armored captain pushes past his hesitation to deliver the rest of the report. Hearing the details of the confrontation, Roderick simply clasps his hands together, a dark satisfaction settling over him as he confirms the boy truly possesses the legendary Seven Wings. Stunned by the revelation, the captain's head snaps up. He can't believe his master was already aware of this world-shattering secret. Desperate to protect their faction, the knight warns that letting a power like that run unchecked could completely obliterate the delicate political balance holding Elmheim together. Urgently seeking orders, he begs his lord to authorize an immediate strike before the situation spirals completely out of control. But Roderick's response is ice-cold and absolute. He commands his men to stand down and do absolutely nothing. Leaning back in his massive chair, the Duke arrogantly brushes off the concern, boasting that their great family wouldn't be so easily toppled by a single anomaly. A sinister smirk creeps across his bearded face as he declares that eventually, that god-tier power will belong to him anyway. The ruthless patriarch decides to let his prey roam free for now, eager to see just how much the infant he failed to murder all those years ago can struggle. His glowing red eye narrows with terrifying malice as he whispers the true name of the boy he plans to consume. Ash. 4 years pass in the blink of an eye, and we cut to the bustling courtyard of the Dorlithal Knight Academy, where a massive crowd of hopeful recruits has gathered for the entrance exams. Strict officials bark orders from the registration desks, aggressively rushing the nervous crowd through the grueling intake process. As a mysterious figure strides toward the registration desks, whispers immediately break out among the hopefuls about a rumored powerhouse. The other recruits eye his lean build with heavy skepticism, expecting someone much more physically imposing based on the wild stories. At the front desk, an official slides over a grim liability waiver, making it clear that the Academy takes zero responsibility for any gruesome accidents during the trials. Sternly, the examiner demands proof of magic, refusing to let any powerless weakling slip through the cracks. But the moment the proctor reads the name Aster F. Elmheim off the paperwork, his entire demeanor shifts. That realization alone is enough to drain the color from the official's face. Our hero just glances over his shoulder with a sly smirk, casually mentioning that his crest is in a rather inconvenient spot to reveal in public. Tugging playfully at his collar, Bro tries to charm his way past the strict requirement using nothing but his good looks. We cut to the massive courtyard outside, where hundreds of anxious candidates are buzzing with nervous energy. Before Aster can even get his bearings, an aggressive voice barks out from the crowd, demanding his attention. A burly swordsman stomps over, immediately singling out our boy for looking a little too arrogant for his liking. Stepping up to the plate, Bigger Smythe introduces himself by openly mocking Aster as some clueless backwater noble who wandered into the wrong arena. With absolute confidence, Bigger declares that this exam is strictly for the elite of the elite, aiming to become honorable Royal Knights cadets. Completely unfazed, Aster just shrugs off the lecture and turns to leave, which only infuriates the loudmouth even more. Desperate to prove a point, Bigger gestures wildly to the surrounding veterans, preaching about the grueling years of blood, sweat, and failure they've all endured, just for a shot at this shining path. Bigger Smythe can't resist mocking our boy's equipment, calling his blade a kitty-sized toy meant for baby chicks. With a dismissive wave of his hand, the burly veteran tells the kid to scram before he gets hurt. Watching from the sidelines, a couple of bystanders shake their heads at Smythe's endless habit of bullying every newcomer who walks through the door. But their attention quickly shifts to the target of the harassment, recognizing him as the subject of recent Elmheim gossip. Hearing the whispers about Aster of the Seven Wings, our hero freezes, baffled that his secret title is already public knowledge. Suddenly, a familiar voice cuts through the chatter, cheerfully greeting Aster as cousin. Something shifts in Aster's eyes as he recognizes the newcomer. It's Grian, stepping up with a fake smile to welcome his estranged relative after a long time apart. The red-haired noble immediately starts throwing shade, pointing out Aster's questionable origins while sarcastically justifying the family title. Ignoring the jab, our boy calmly brings up the elephant in the room, offering a flat apology for Daryus's death. Grian just waves it off with a callous smirk, declaring that the disgrace got exactly what he deserved. Recalling his dead brother, Grian admits he found the older boy to be nothing but an arrogant nuisance anyway. Leaning in with absolute arrogance, Grian makes sure Aster knows that a fancy title doesn't put him above the main house elites. His smile turns malicious as he delivers a chilling reminder. Out here, the Viscount isn't around to protect his adopted son. As Grian walks away, the other applicants watch the tense exchange, realizing this exam just became a nightmare with two Elmheims in the mix. A nearby applicant watches the exchange, sweating bullets as he mutters about the bitter hatred between the main and branch houses. Desperate to avoid any crossfire, Bigger shuffles over to our hero, trying to confirm his identity. He stammers out the question everyone is thinking, asking if the dark-haired boy is really part of the terrifying Elmheim family. Instead of pulling rank, our boy just lets out a soft friendly chuckle. Extending a hand, he casually introduces himself by his first name, completely downplaying his terrifying lineage. The scene shifts to the towering first exam hall, where an examiner stands on a balcony, loudly declaring that the Royal Knights are the absolute pinnacle of the kingdom's military. Clenching his fist, the official screams with patriotic fervor, demanding that every candidate be ready to lay down their lives as the king's proud blades. Down in the courtyard, the crowd of hopefuls listens in dead silence as the examiner makes it clear that weak, clumsy warriors will be weeded out immediately. Looking out over the sea of applicants, the official orders them to treat this exam like a literal battlefield and show their true worth. Aster tunes out the patriotic nonsense, a confident smirk crossing his face as he realizes he's finally made it back to a stage he was never allowed to reach in his past life. His blood pumps with anticipation, knowing that beyond these gates lies a realm of elite warriors. And sitting at the absolute peak is the man who murdered him. That dark memory of Duke Roderick A. Elmheim hits him like a wave, visualizing the supreme commander standing at the absolute peak of this kingdom. Inside that mental vision, our hero stands surrounded by the shadowy phantoms of his past, silently vowing to drag his former father down from his throne. Staring into the phantom image of Roderick's menacing glare, Aster promises that their bloody reunion is coming sooner than the Duke thinks. But before he can make the Duke pay, Aster locks his glowing eyes on the immediate hurdle. He's going to absolutely crush this selection exam. No warm-ups, no warnings. The proctor throws his hand down, unleashing a relentless barrage of spears from the sky to kick off the bloodbath. The sight alone is enough to drain the color from Aster's face as a massive spear impales a man right beside him. Officially announcing the trial of arrows, the proctor watches the lifeless body hit the floor, sending the crowd into absolute panic. This isn't just a test anymore. The stakes just got much bigger, with the only rule being to survive the rain of steel. Every instinct in the examinees' bodies screams one thing: run, as they scramble desperately to avoid getting skewered. Desperate to survive, one terrified participant needs the others to move. Right now. And the urgency in his voice makes it clear that standing still means certain death. A few veterans quickly group up, shouting at each other to watch their backs and block the incoming projectiles. Watching from above, the proctor observes the courtyard, completely unimpressed by their basic survival tactics. He coldly notes that even with teamwork, the survival rate is a miserable 30%. A detail that changes everything. Relying on cheap tricks hits its limit fast, as another man's defense shatters on contact and he gets brutally impaled. Catching the examiner's eye, a silver-haired warrior cleanly deflects a spear, hinting at the true purpose of this slaughter. What the Academy really wants to see is overwhelming power, and amidst the chaos our boy just stands completely still. Baffled by his inaction, the other examinees can't process what they are seeing, assuming he just froze up from fear. Grian can't resist mocking our hero for his apparent paralysis, laughing that he's about to die like a pincushion. Unfazed by the incoming death, Aster calmly grips his hilt and draws his blade, ready to show them what a real wing crest can do. With a single upward swing, Aster unleashes a massive red energy wave that tears right through the falling spears. The rest of the examinees freeze in absolute shock. Nobody saw a defense like this coming. Standing dead center in a swirling vortex of raw power, our hero effortlessly deflects every single projectile. A slow smirk creeps across Aster's face. He's been waiting for this exact moment to flex his strength. He doesn't let up, generating a colossal crimson storm that completely obliterates the exam's deadly challenge. Down below, the blonde rival who was just mocking him now cowers on the ground, terrified by the monster he just provoked. Every instinct in the blonde kid's body screams one thing: he is completely outclassed. Up above, the gray-haired instructor watches in awe, realizing this kid is spinning his released magic to create an impenetrable air current. Wrapped in an untouchable tempest, the sheer pressure of our boy's power brings the arena to a standstill. As the crimson storm finally dissipates, the surviving candidates look around in bewildered relief. Looking down at the aftermath, the examiner notes the higher-than-expected survival rate, completely unfazed by the broken test. Addressing the battered crowd, he officially announces that anyone still standing has cleared the first phase. But there's no time to celebrate, as he immediately orders the exhausted survivors to follow him to the next site. Bigger groans about their demonic teacher, barely able to keep his legs from giving out. Aster just glances back with a casual smirk, teasing his exhausted companion for already running out of breath. Bigger stares in disbelief, demanding to know how our hero hasn't even broken a sweat. Up in the stands, a gray-haired observer watches closely, deeply impressed that Aster of the Seven Wings can unleash that much magic without tiring. As our boy strides forward with absolute confidence, the proctor eagerly waits to see his actual combat skills in action. Staring from the massive crowd, Grian observes our boy. His memory flashes in his mind as he bows before a shadowy figure, receiving strict orders to stop Aster from becoming a royal knight at all costs. Their mysterious leader emphasizes that the very future of the Elmheim family depends entirely on Grian succeeding. Moving to the exam grounds, an instructor announces a new rule: everyone must exchange their weapons for identical standardized swords. Annoyed by the hassle, Bigger groans and wonders why they suddenly changed the testing format. Resigned, the young man quickly accepts his fate, shrugging that standard-issue gear doesn't make much difference for middle-class knights like him anyway. However, Bigger leans in and tells our hero the truth. The higher-ups are specifically terrified of his legendary magic sword. Aster just stares at his blade, realizing his overwhelming power has already forced the examiners to rewrite the rules. Suddenly, Grian struts onto the scene, mockingly praising his cousin Aster for already taming a pathetic follower. Furious, Bigger defends, but Grian instantly shuts him down by exposing his low-ranking status as the heir to Baronhouse Smythe. Grian ruthlessly threatens the terrified boy, warning the third-rate noble that wagging his tail at the wrong person will get him killed. Sweating bullets, the cowardly Smythe heir immediately backpedals, desperately begging for mercy and throwing our boy right under the bus. Watching from the sidelines, our boy senses the growing tension, realizing the vibe is completely off. The instructor steps up and lays out the rules for the second phase, a massive 3-team battle for territory hidden deep within the forest. To secure victory, a squad must capture and hold at least 2 flag bases by the time the evening bell rings. But here is the brutal catch. There are 0 restrictions on combat, meaning their issued blades are literal permission slips to slaughter the competition. Holding up 3 brightly colored flags, the proctor prepares to sort the candidates into their respective factions. Lines are quickly drawn, with the arrogant Grian taking his place under the red banner while the others split into yellow and blue. A bright signal fire shoots into the sky, officially kicking off the ruthless survival test. Holding up his blue flag, our boy breaks down the brutal math of the flag system, and the stakes just skyrocketed into a guaranteed bloodbath. Bigger starts connecting the dots out loud, and the terrifying truth finally drops. Out of 3 squads, only one is walking away with a passing grade. His teammates are already panicking, openly admitting they want absolutely nothing to do with fighting the Elmheim squad. Baffled, our boy just stares at them, completely failing to understand their sudden cowardice. Letting out a heavy sigh, Bigger spells it out. They are genuinely terrified. It isn't the exam they fear, but the inevitable crushing revenge of a main house Elmheim noble. Even in a sanctioned test, pointing a blade at someone like Grian could permanently destroy a knight's future. And in the absolute worst-case scenario, crossing that powerful family means getting your entire bloodline wiped off the map. Bigger doesn't hesitate to forfeit, deciding that walking away is infinitely better than throwing their lives away in a rigged game. With a bitter smile, he tells our boy that someone like him could never understand the sheer terror that weaklings have to live with. Left completely isolated in what was supposed to be a team trial, our boy dashes through the grassy terrain alone. A memory hits him like a wave. A dark vision of Grian standing over a beaten victim, reminding him that the Elmheim clan are absolute tyrants. In that same memory, Bigger's words echo in his mind, reinforcing the harsh reality that defying a monster like Grian is a death sentence for ordinary knights. Snapping back to the present, a wry smile crosses his face as he realizes that to the rest of the world, he's just another terrifying piece of that oppressive system. Pushing deeper into the arena, he notices something is already wrong before the first move is made. The entire battlefield is dead silent. He stops in his tracks, wondering if the other teams are just playing it safe, when a sudden rustle in the brush puts him on high alert. And then a light-haired rival steps out of the shadows, looking incredibly smug as he mocks our hero for showing up solo. Both lock eyes in the clearing, and the rival casually drops a hint that someone else had already predicted this exact scenario. Baffled by the cryptic warning, our boy demands to know who is pulling the strings and why the enemy's flag has already been lowered. This smug opponent doesn't bother explaining the grand plan, simply stating that he found himself with some free time to kill. Tossing his team's yellow cloth into the air, he issues a direct challenge, demanding that our boy keep him entertained. Our hero's eyes widen in pure shock as the pieces fail to add up. Staring at the rival casually guarding a completely different red flag, his mind races as he tries to figure out what kind of twisted trap he just walked into. Meanwhile, across the exam grounds, a squad of uniformed examinees marches steadily toward a blue flag. Leading the charge is none other than the arrogant Elmheim cousin, eager to show our hero what their family's true power looks like. But let's zoom out for a second. Welcome to Stage 2 of the Kingdom Knight Selection Exam, an explosive all-out siege battle. 20 participants are split into 3 squads, and the only way to secure victory is by capturing at least 2 territories before the clock runs out. Cutting back to the fierce duel, Aster and the blonde swordsman clash blades as the ultimate win condition hangs in the balance. Locking eyes with his opponent, our boy demands to know what is really going on here. He points out a glaring contradiction. This guy was supposed to be fighting for the yellow faction, so it makes absolutely zero sense for him to be standing guard over a red flag. With a smug smirk, the blonde warrior reveals his twisted strategy. He has secretly allied himself with the Elmheim family. Watching from the shadows, a blue-haired observer identifies this traitor as Christopher Nolan, a 5 Wings crest holder and founder of court swordsmanship. This spectator notes that despite being overshadowed earlier, Nolan was one of the only participants to effortlessly survive the brutal trial of the turret. Only one other person passed that test so easily, Aster himself, making this a collision between the exam's 2 greatest monsters. Resting his chin on his hand, Scout laments that such brilliant unpolished gems are forced to eliminate each other so soon. Sparks fly as their glowing weapons collide again, sending a massive shockwave rippling through the arena. Pushing back with raw strength, our hero calls out the fatal flaw in this supposed alliance, reminding Nolan that only one team can actually claim first place. But Christopher just laughs it off, confessing that he fully intends to let the Elmheim main house win while his squad launches a devastating sneak attack on Aster's defenseless base. Seeing the unconscious bodies of his classmates on the ground, Aster realizes his squad is in serious danger. Our boy demands to know if Grian threatened Nolan into this cowardly scheme, reminding him of the consequences of defying the Elmheim family. But Christopher just shrugs it off, coldly stating that nobody in their right mind would stand in front of a speeding carriage. Stepping forward, the blonde noble emphasizes that their entire society is built on a strict, unforgiving hierarchy. He lunges forward with a heavy strike, justifying his underhanded tactics as the natural behavior expected of true nobility. The memory hits Aster like a wave. He realizes something was terribly wrong the moment he received this blade. Back before the exam started, the proctor handed him this exact weapon, and now it's obvious he was given a defective piece on purpose. Snapping back to the present, Christopher swings his glowing sword with lethal intent, declaring that he never liked the Elmheim bunch anyway. The attacker targets Aster specifically, calling him a show-off as he unleashes another relentless barrage. With one devastating swing, Christopher shatters Aster's defective blade into pieces. Left holding nothing but a broken hilt, Bro watches as mysterious red energy begins to pulse from the shattered metal. Without hesitation, he leaps backward and hurls the glowing fragment straight at his opponent's face. Christopher barely manages to deflect the improvised projectile, stunned by the sudden counterattack. That split-second distraction is all our hero needs to turn on his heel and sprint out of the arena. Aster yells back that their fight will have to wait. He has a much bigger score to settle with the traitor who sabotaged his weapon. Back in the arena, Christopher Nolan smirks, completely misinterpreting our hero's tactical retreat as pure cowardice. But as he gloats, something on the ground catches the arrogant knight's eye. Picking up the shattered remnant of the blade, Nolan scoffs at the pathetic quality of the metal. Crushing the fragment in his hand, he quickly pieces together that Elmheim rigged the match, completely ruining his fun. We cut to the team's base where Aster sprints through the archway, desperately calling out for smates. Instead of his teammates, he finds his blonde cousin Grian lounging on the wall, casually noting that Nolan failed to slow him down. Grian can't resist mocking our boy's previous boast about being enough to win on his own. With absolute confidence, the arrogant noble declares that his forces have already captured the third base and achieved total domination. Bro's expression darkens, and he demands to know exactly what happened to his squad. Looking down from the wall, the blonde cousin says nothing, just stares. That silence is worse than any scream. Suddenly, the cold steel of a blade is pressed directly against Aster's spine. Turns out the person holding the weapon is his own teammate Bigger, who nervously claims he never planned to play along. Sweating under the pressure, the traitor stresses that he'd never risk his neck siding with a fool who openly defies the Elmheim family. Laughter echoes around the courtyard as several armed men step out of the shadows, completely surrounding our guy. They mock his fallen squad for surrendering so easily, but our hero just glares back, asking if they seriously think a few extra bodies will be enough to stop him. Grian smirks from his vantage point, confidently declaring that our hero is mistaken. He's already secured the victory. The rules of this siege battle are simple. Whichever team holds 2 or more territories when the clock runs out takes the win. Looking down at Aster, the enemy leader points out a fatal flaw in his strategy. Even if he desperately sprints from base to base, he simply lacks the manpower to defend those captured flags. It's a basic numbers game. The moment our boy leaves a zone, Grian's squad will just swoop in and reclaim it. With absolute confidence, Grian makes sure everyone knows exactly where he stands. As long as they hold 2 bases at the buzzer, they win. Aster calmly rests a hand on his hilt, deciding right then and there to completely dismantle their little strategy. His golden eye flares with terrifying intensity as he promises to cut down every single person standing in his way. A chill runs down the soldiers' spines. Just how outclassed they really are is starting to dawn on them. But Grian refuses to back down, mocking the threat as nothing more than a desperate bluff. Gesturing toward the shattered blade on the ground, Grian gloats that even a legendary 7 wings is completely useless without a proper weapon. Grian openly challenges our hero to try and take on his entire armed squad empty-handed. Unfazed, a slow smirk creeps across Aster's face. Been waiting for this as he smoothly draws the ruined hilt. Holding up the fractured steel, Bro casually praises Grian for his clever little trap. Bigger freezes in pure shock. A massive chunk of the shattered blade is dropped to the ground. Tossing the useless hilt aside, Aster actually compliments the ambush strategy. Watching his target disarm, Grian is absolutely convinced victory is his. The metallic clatter of the discarded weapon echoes through the tense arena, but a dangerous golden light flares in our hero's eye. Standing completely unarmed, he flashes a confident smile and repeats his praise for the trap. Blind to the danger, the enemy leader's malicious grin only widens. As the final pieces of shattered steel settle on the floor, the real fight begins. At the last possible second, Aster ducks and narrowly avoids a lethal strike from an advancing soldier. Without hesitation, he leaps forward and slams the attacker with a single devastating kick. The blade of the fallen attacker leaps high into the air as Aster moves forward. Reaching the hand, Aster snatches the spinning weapon right out of the air. With one clean strike, Aster sends a crimson wave of energy crashing into the remaining guards. Staring down at his decimated squad, Grian can't process what he is seeing. None of this makes sense. Pointing the stolen blade upward, Aster bluntly states that stepping out of the shadows was a fatal blunder. Glowing with raw power, our boy declares that this overconfidence has already cost Grian the battle. Furious and terrified, Grian screams out, cursing our hero as an absolute monster. Without hesitation, Aster leaps forward, his body erupting in a swirling vortex of crimson energy. Propelled by raw mana, he rockets high into the sky, closing the massive gap to the wall in a flash. Looking up in pure horror, the commander is completely baffled that anyone could fly such a ridiculous distance. Before his target can even raise a guard, a devastating blow shatters Grian's defense and sends him plummeting. The memory hits Aster like a wave. taking him back to the very first time he hovered as a wingless infant. In that fleeting recollection, he remembers the intoxicating rush of absolute omnipotence that came with bending mana to his will. With Grian completely helpless in his grip, Aster styles on him mid-fall, casually rubbing his newfound aerial dominance right in his terrified face. Desperate, Grian begs him to stop, the reality of his impending doom finally setting in. Raising his stolen blade high, Aster prepares to deliver the final crushing judgment. A slow smirk creeps across his face as his eyes glow with terrifying authority, finishing his brutal taunt. Channeling every last ounce of strength, Aster brings his enemy down for good, triggering a colossal explosion upon impact. When the dust settles, a massive plume of smoke rises from the wall. Watching from a distance, Bigger stammers in absolute disbelief, demanding to know how anyone could fight like that. Bigger's jaw hits the floor. He can't even process the monstrous display of power he's seeing because absolutely none of it makes sense. Emerging from the lingering smoke, Aster casually drags his battered opponent by the collar. He comes to a sudden halt, his golden eyes fixed on the remaining crowd. Lifting the unconscious man up one last time, the tension in the courtyard reaches a boiling point. Without a second thought, our hero drops the dead weight onto the dirt. The onlookers freeze in absolute terror, completely paralyzed until a voice screams at them to move. Barely conscious, the defeated man spits out a desperate order for his subordinates to finish the job. Invoking the terrifying name of Elmheim, he uses the Duke's authority to force their hands. Reluctantly, Bigger dashes forward, grabbing a discarded blade from the ground. Aster stands his ground, calmly questioning if they are truly that terrified of Elmheim's retaliation. Desperate, the attacker explains that his minor noble family would be crushed like ants if they defied the higher-ups. Painting a grim picture of their reality, the man admits that weaklings have no choice but to kneel and act submissively just to survive. Fueled by frustration, he screams that someone as powerful as Aster could never comprehend their pathetic struggle. Our boy says nothing, taking in the harsh truth of their miserable existence. Instead of getting angry, a quiet amused smile forms on his lips. Baffled by the reaction, the desperate swordsman demands to know what's so funny. The memory hits Aster like a wave. His sister Kudryavka once threw those exact same words in his face. Snapping back to the present, our hero freely admits that he's been blessed with incredible power. But with that overwhelming strength comes a responsibility that only he can shoulder. Right here, right now, Aster decides, the arrogant Elmheim family is his true target. With absolute confidence, he vows to completely obliterate the corrupt system from the ground up. The onlookers freeze. Nobody expected such a treasonous outburst. The beaten swordsman can't process what he is hearing. None of this makes sense. Bigger stammers out a warning, terrified of the massive consequences such words carry. Our boy doesn't stutter, confirming that he is officially declaring war on the ruling powers. He paints a horrifying picture for the lackeys, warning them that blind devotion to the current lords will only end in betrayal and a miserable death. If they want to avoid being discarded like trash, they have to stand up and fight back. Brandishing the legendary 7 wings as proof of his right to rule, Aster forces the terrified men to choose their true master. A heavy silence falls over the crowd as the sheer pressure of his ultimatum sinks in. Desperate, the defeated commander screams from the dirt, threatening to hunt down anyone who dares to switch sides. Bigger and other soldiers freeze in their tracks, the sheer venom of the blond man's roar paralyzing them completely. Sweating bullets, Bigger feels the crushing weight of the decision. Unable to hold it in any longer, he lets out a massive, frustrated scream. With a bitter curse, he drops his weapon to the dirt. Charging forward, the desperate man demands to know if our hero can actually pull this off. He lays it all on the line, warning that false hope will earn his eternal resentment. Aster doesn't flinch, staring right back with glowing eyes as he seals the promise. Bigger's mate screams his family title at the top of his lungs, making sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. Raising the blue flag high, he officially declares his allegiance to the new master. The rest of the onlookers are completely stunned, realizing that Grian's entire scheme has just crumbled to dust. Pinned to the dirt with a sword at his throat, Grian's eyes flare a demonic red as he screams pure venom at his conqueror. Bigger's mates waste no time, gesturing wildly at the bewildered crowd to snap out of their daze and seize their chance against the arrogant elites. With Aster standing quietly behind him, the newly minted ally screams his loyalty to the 7 wings for everyone to hear. The sheer audacity of the declaration sends a ripple of nervous murmurs through the remaining examinees. Our hero watches the chaos unfold, quietly calculating his next move now that he has his first official pawn on the board. But one noble isn't going to cut it. If he truly wants to dismantle the Elmheim Empire, he needs an entire army. Across the ruined arena, Grian remains planted in the dirt, completely shattered by his humiliating defeat. A silver-haired teammate steps forward, cautiously offering a hand to the battered aristocrat. The furious blonde violently swats the hand aside, spitting pure venom at the very people who tried to help him. His bruised face twists into a mask of pure hatred, terrified of what the main family will do if he lets this branch family upstart win. Even as he stews in his anger, a gruesome vision of a severed arm and glowing red eyes pulls at his mind, a terrifying reminder of his brother's failure. Clutching his hand, the desperate noble vows to survive, refusing to accept this pathetic end. Just as the panic sets in, heavy footsteps approach the kneeling student, accompanied by a mocking voice. Caught completely off guard, the fallen aristocrat snaps his head up to see who is talking down to him. Standing before him is Nolan, a calm swordsman who immediately draws Grian's explosive rage. Pointing a trembling finger toward Aster in the distance, Grian furiously gestures at his supposed weapon, visibly enraged by its failure to eliminate the target. A twisted smirk spreads across Grian's bruised face as he clutches what he believes to be his ultimate trump card. Even the onlookers have to admit, Nolan's raw swordsmanship might just be the deadliest force in the entire arena. Barking like a mad dog, the desperate aristocrat orders his supposed weapon to carve our hero into pieces. But before the command even lands, a red cloth violently smacks the furious blonde right in the face. Nolan stands completely unfazed, his arms still outstretched after casually tossing the flag back to its owner. With a cold, piercing glare, the silver-haired prodigy declares that these cowardly tactics completely violate his code of chivalry. Turning his back on the pathetic noble, he officially severs their alliance, leaving Grian utterly speechless. The surrounding students watch in absolute disbelief as the strongest fighter on the field openly betrays the main family. Drawing his blade with a sharp metallic ring, the honorable swordsman shifts his focus to Aster, demanding they finally settle the score. Our boy doesn't flinch, his eyes glowing with an intense dark energy as he steps up to the challenge. Gripping his weapon tight, Nolan proudly stakes his family's legendary reputation on this single clash. It's a pure battle of ideals. The refined techniques of the Nolan bloodline against the mythical might of the Seven Wings. Golden aura erupts around the challenger's blade, the sheer pressure of his mana making the air vibrate. Lunging forward with explosive speed, he unleashes a devastating wave of light, determined to prove his superiority once and for all. Yet Aster simply flares his own monstrous red aura, calmly brushing off the attack and holding up a hand to signal a delay to their true duel. Forced to defend himself, Aster brings his blade up to block, unleashing a burst of crimson energy that completely overpowers his challenger. Straining under the immense weight of the blow, the silver-haired prodigy realizes our hero's strength is on a completely different level than before. Baffled by Aster's sudden lack of killing intent, Nolan demands to know if he's forgotten the stakes of their trial. Kicking up a cloud of dust, the honorable swordsman takes a step back, reminding his opponent that the academy rules only allow a single squad to claim victory. With a fierce swing of his blade, he insists that their clash of ideals has to be settled right here in the dirt. Our boy doesn't even raise his weapon, stating that a fight to the death doesn't fit his schedule. Looking the fierce warrior dead in the eye, Aster reveals his true intentions. He actually wants his rival to pass the exam and earn his knighthood. The sheer absurdity of the statement stops Nolan dead in his tracks, his face twisting into pure confusion. Gesturing casually to the surrounding crowd, Aster points out that forcing a fellow rebel to abandon his dreams just over a technicality would be a massive waste of potential. A scheming smirk creeps across his face, his eyes glowing with dark amusement as he declares his intention to rig the entire test so that every single student walks away a winner. This audacious claim sends a shockwave through the gathered competitors, with Grian and the rest sweating bullets at the sheer impossibility of the idea. Unfazed by their doubts, Aster admits there are no guarantees but insists that with absolute cooperation, they can break the system together. To set things in motion, he turns his attention away from Nolan and takes a deliberate step toward his beaten cousin. Still kneeling in the dirt, Grian flinches hard, every instinct in his bruised body expecting another brutal punishment. Instead of a strike, Aster extends an open hand and a warm smile, gesturing for his former rival to bury the hatchet and join his revolution. The heavy clanking of a mechanism echoes across the arena as a single flag ascends, instantly throwing the observers into a state of utter confusion. A purple-haired examiner loses his mind, screaming at the competitors for seemingly botching the most basic task of the trial. But our boy is already 10 steps ahead, calmly breaking down the exact wording of the victory conditions to reveal a massive glaring loophole. He lays out the masterstroke, a three-way alliance designed to jointly occupy the camps, guaranteeing a win for everyone involved. The furious official gets right in Aster's face, demanding to know if this entire stunt is just a sick joke meant to mock the academy. Behind him, Grian and the other recruits start sweating bullets, their fragile confidence shattering under the weight of the examiner's wrath. Leaning in with pure intimidation, the official tries to corner him with a hypothetical scenario, asking if a true soldier would just shake hands with a target they were ordered to destroy. Without missing a beat, Aster fires back with cold, pragmatic logic, stating that a smart commander knows when an enemy is worth more alive than dead. Even as the examiner glares down at the defiant student, the rigid ideal of perfectly obedient faceless knights anchors his stubborn mindset. Refusing to yield, the purple-haired man barks that a mere recruit has absolutely no right to make those kinds of strategic calls. Our hero doesn't back down an inch, boldly daring the man to disqualify them and pointing out that failing students who followed the rules would just be a pathetic power trip. Hearing this, the official visibly flinches, completely paralyzed by the flawless razor-sharp logic of Aster. Sensing the hesitation, Aster presses his advantage, leaning in to deliver the final crushing blow to their authority. He casually drops a political landmine, reminding the nervous examiners that the powerful noble families backing these students won't take a mass disqualification lightly. Trapped by bureaucracy and the looming threat of noble outrage, the official can only grit his teeth in absolute defeat. An hour later, the dust settles, leaving the recruits to stew in the tense silence of the waiting room. The silence is deafening, broken only by Bigger Smates's restless tapping as the anxiety finally catches up to him. While Bigger spirals over the possibility of mass disqualification, our hero just shrugs, completely unbothered by the looming threat. For him, this delay is already a victory, proof that his audacious gamble has forced the Academy's hand. Across the room, Grian crosses his arms, clearly losing patience with the agonizing standby. Leaning in close, Bigger can't help but wonder aloud how exactly Aster managed to rope such a stubborn noble into their scheme. A knowing smirk creeps across Aster's face, hinting at a manipulative masterstroke he's keeping entirely to himself. Before he can explain, the heavy double doors are violently thrown open, shattering the quiet tension of the hall. Both boys whip around, instantly on high alert as the moment of truth finally arrives. Stepping through the threshold is Principal Mimir himself, arriving to personally deliver the final verdict on their unprecedented rebellion. The heavy silence of the examination hall shatters as an unseen proctor commands attention for the final results. A stern examiner steps up beside Principal Mimir, barking at the seated candidates to keep quiet. Leaning over his desk, Bigger Smate squints at the legendary figure standing before them. Our hero quickly shushes his new friend, warning him not to underestimate the seemingly ordinary old man. Locking eyes with the mastermind of the rebellion, Mimir acknowledges the massive headache Aster just caused the administration. Pacing the stage, the headmaster emphasizes just how unheard of it is to pass this many students. Even as Mimir speaks, the image of the Academy's powerful directors flashes by, revealing that they actually backed the audacious proposal. Caught off guard by the bureaucratic phrasing, Aster furrows his brow, trying to decipher what this means for their fate. A subtle, knowing smile tugs at the corner of the principal's mouth. With absolute warmth, Mimir delivers the final verdict. Every single candidate has passed. Pure euphoria erupts across the auditorium as the students realize their impossible gamble actually paid off. While Bigger throws his arms up in triumph, Aster allows himself a quiet smirk of satisfaction. Clapping his hands together, the principal officially welcomes the newest class to the Drassel Kingdom Knight Academy. Hours later, the tension of the day melts away as night falls over the Grand Academy grounds, accompanied by a loud sigh of relief. Soaking in a massive, luxurious tub, Bigger happily marvels at the incredible perks of his new elite lifestyle. Splashing in the warm water, Bigger practically beams, enthusiastically attributing his newfound luxury entirely to Aster. Running a hand through his soaked hair, Aster simply takes in the moment of peace. The rest of the recruits erupt into cheers, swearing lifelong loyalty to the leader who just handed them their futures. But not everyone is ready to kiss the ring. Nolan scoffs from the edge of the pool, calling them opportunists and refusing to offer any thanks. When called out by the others, Nolan defensively insists his own clash with Aster was merely a tactical draw. Leaning back with a confident smirk, our hero brushes off the banter, reminding them that they just successfully defied the untouchable Elmheims to become official candidates. His playful mood shifts to dead seriousness as he outlines his vision. A relentless wave of victories meant to tear down the corrupt establishment. With a fierce glint in his eye, Aster officially declares the start of their grand rebellion. To pull off this colossal stunt, our boy is banking on the ultimate ace up his sleeve. His older sister, Alfin, an Academy veteran whose insider knowledge is guaranteed to back his explosive campaign. Stepping away from the crowd, he grounds himself, knowing the real grueling training begins at dawn. Leaving the water behind, he realizes he still has to adjust to the sheer luxury of this elite environment. A sudden rustling behind him breaks his train of thought. Turning around, our boy freezes, finding the entire bathhouse of recruits suddenly kneeling at his feet. Completely caught off guard, he throws his hands up in a panic as the mob swarms him. Pressing in close, the eager students gesture wildly, explaining their ridiculous logic that praying to a living legend is bound to bring them divine luck. Watching the madness unfold from the sidelines, Nolan rubs his temples, already dreading the sheer headache of dealing with this chaotic faction. Miles away from the Academy's celebrations, the night sky hangs heavy over the imposing Elmheim estate. Inside a dimly lit study, the atmosphere is suffocating as Helen Elmheim coldly dresses down her kneeling son, utterly disgusted that he crawled back after failing to eliminate the new 7 wings. Her eyes glow with a terrifying pink malice as she brings up Aster's audacious vow to crush their noble family. The matriarch's voice drips with venom, demanding to know how Grian could just stand there and swallow such a blatant insult to their bloodline. Sweating profusely, the disgraced noble desperately begs his mother for one more chance, promising to wipe away the stain of his blunder. Before the words can even leave his mouth, a brutal strike shatters his jaw and sends blood spraying across the room. A purple-haired girl steps into the light, her fist still raised as she viciously declares that trash doesn't get second chances. The sheer force of her blow sends Grian skidding across the polished floor like a discarded ragdoll. Looking down with absolute disdain, Lillian A. Elmheim suggests her pathetic brother would be better off as monster feed, comparing his failure to another disgraced loser named Daryus. Trembling on the ground, Grian weakly pleads with his sister to stop the torment. Instead of mercy, Lillian answers with a devastating kick straight into him, launching him backward once again. As her heavy boot stomps the ground, Grian's mind twists with venomous thoughts, refusing to take responsibility for his own weakness. Battered and bleeding on his family's floor, Grian's resentment boils over, directing all his hatred toward the one person who ruined his life. Aster. The memory hits Grian like a physical blow, flashing back to the moment Aster offered him a sinister deal. Confused and defensive, the disgraced noble listened as the stranger preyed on his deepest fear. The wrath of the main family's great lord. Those glowing yellow eyes pierced right through him, spelling out a brutal truth. Returning empty-handed meant a guaranteed death sentence. A sudden splatter of fresh blood snapped his attention away from the threat. Casually revealing the severed head of his brother Daryus, Aster used the gruesome sight to shatter whatever resolve Grian had left. Leaning in close, Aster placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, whispering about the horrific final moments of their victim. With absolute malice, Aster laid out his terms. Turn a blind eye to his upcoming plot, or end up as another decapitated warning. Completely cornered and paralyzed by terror, Grian had no choice but to swallow his pride and accept the dark bargain. Snapping back to the present reality of the Elmheim estate, Lillian's brutal assault is suddenly halted by a commanding voice. Bruised and weeping pathetically on the floor, Grian looks up to acknowledge his savior. His older brother, Julius A. Elmheim, sits arrogantly on a lavish chair, casually preaching about the bonds of blood while resting his hand on a woman's head. Resting on his lap is none other than Alfin, Aster's sister, now bound by a metal mask and forced into submission. Tightening his grip on her skull, Julius mocks her, and though she remains completely silent, her glowing blue eyes burn with suppressed rage. Across the grand room, Helen traces her fingers over their family crest, reflecting on the absolute authority they've held over the knights for generations. As her gaze darkens with a sinister pink glow, Helen acknowledges that Aster's sudden rise to legendary status is a direct threat they must extinguish. Turning her back to the siblings, Helen issues a chilling command, gesturing sharply to emphasize that they need to remind the Academy exactly who is in charge. A sadistic grin spreads across Lillian's face as her eyes flare with a toxic pink light, eager to prove they aren't just figureheads. Matching his sister's bloodlust, Julius's gaze burns a demonic red as he vows to unleash a brutal display of pure violence. The next morning at the Academy's outdoor courtyard, a fresh batch of cadets undergoes a grueling physical evaluation. Barking over the sound of clashing steel, an unseen instructor reminds the recruits that they were handpicked to join the glorious Royal Knights. An idealized image of a fully armored warrior flashes in their minds as the teacher details the unmatched combat strategy required to wear that cape. But reaching that elite level is no walk in the park, as Bigger strains every muscle to channel his green aura into a solid strike. Brutal feedback from the impact sends a shockwave through his arms, completely shattering his magic against the unyielding black stone. Dripping with sweat, the struggling recruit curses under his breath, realizing just how massive the skill gap really is. Breaking down the Academy's strict 6-tier ranking system, the instructor explains that only the most capable students will earn the right to learn advanced techniques. The teacher warns that relying purely on physical swordplay only makes you third-rate, while relying only on magic only bumps you up to second-rate. The true standard is finally revealed as Aster Cadet steps forward, his blade already swirling with a dense crackling red aura. Passionately declaring that continuous growth is their only path to freedom, the instructor watches as our hero unleashes a colossal wave of power. Catching everyone completely off guard, the sheer force of the swing leaves the entire class and their teacher staring in absolute disbelief. Aster stands perfectly calm, his weapon resting easily at his side after effortlessly cleaving the supposedly indestructible target in two. A smooth glowing purple cross-section on the stone proves just how flawless his technique really is, prompting an impressed shout from the staff. Thrilled by the impressive display, the instructor cheerfully establishes the impossible strike as the new baseline, prompting collective groans of exasperation from the recruits. Unbeknownst to the protagonist, two mysterious figures observe his every move from the upper balcony. Looking down at the courtyard, the high-ranking officials are already whispering about the rumored prodigy they call 7 Wings. They can hardly believe their eyes. Slicing through a golem-grade magic iron pillar with such effortless precision proves he is undeniably special. Yet the dark-haired observer warns that if the boy grows complacent with his current strength, he'll be swallowed whole. Even as the officials watch from above, the chilling thought of the Academy's apex predators, the ruthless dragons, pulls at their minds. Leaving the training grounds behind, Aster and Bigger stroll down a sunlit corridor, dissecting the harsh reality of their new status. Staring at his own evaluation card, the struggling recruit grumbles about the Academy's relentless, cutthroat meritocracy. He points out a glaring truth. Out of their entire class, only Aster and Nolan manage to break past the lowest tier. The stark contrast between a lowly rank V and a prestigious rank IV is a bitter pill to swallow for Bigger. Not missing a beat, Bro flashes an encouraging smile, reminding his buddy that they both need to hit rank 2 anyway to become Royal Knights. Exasperated but fired up, jokingly referring to his powerful friend as a strict boss. That sudden title catches our boy completely off guard, leaving him blinking in genuine confusion. Dropping the jokes, Bigger leans in close, asking if he seriously forgot the massive promise he made. The memory hits him like a wave. Back then, standing victoriously with a glowing blade, Aster had boldly sworn to crush the corrupt Elmheim faction. His passionate speech ignites a spark of hope among the recruits, inspiring them to look to him for salvation before the vision fades. Firmly grabbing his friend's shoulder, Bigger makes it clear that he fully intends to support his new leader. Throwing his arm up in excitement, Bigger enthusiastically declares they will dismantle Elmheim together, while our hero just sighs at the sudden responsibility. Accepting the weight of their expectations, Aster flashes a confident smile, realizing that protecting everyone means pushing his limits. Gripping his rank card tightly, he makes a quiet vow to himself. Crushing the corrupt establishment requires a whole new level of power. But before any grand rebellion can begin, a loud growl from Bigger's stomach reminds them that surviving afternoon training requires food first. Arriving at the dining hall, the duo finds the entrance completely blocked by a murmuring crowd wondering what is going on. Pushing their way through the sea of cadets, panic ripples through the onlookers as they immediately recognize Aster and warn him that Elmheim is on a rampage. A blonde aristocrat casually chewing on bread looks down with a mocking smirk, acknowledging our boy's arrival. The tension spikes instantly as the arrogant noble taunts him for taking so long, claiming they already started the feast. Inside the hall, the sight is pure disrespect. Julius and Lillian are arrogantly using unconscious cadets as human furniture. Shock drains the color from Bigger's face as he connects the dots, and Aster grimly confirms the identity of the monsters sitting before them. This is Julius A. Elmheim, second in line to the main house, and his sadistic younger sister Lillian. Even as the siblings sit casually in the dining hall, the chilling thought of their vicious, blood-soaked reputation as Elmheim's most ruthless tyrants pulls at Aster's mind. Sweat rolls down his face as he mentally kicks himself for forgetting that these formidable threats were enrolled here too. Resting her foot directly on the metal mask of her defeated younger brother, Lillian cruelly taunts the fallen boy while sizing up her new prey. A muffled groan escapes the metal contraption as she applies even more pressure to his trapped head. Bigger stares in utter confusion, unable to comprehend the bizarre metal contraption locked onto the boy's head. Our hero knows exactly what he's looking at. His voice drops as he names the infamous iron shackles. Even as he stands in the dining hall, a grim vision of his past life crawling under the weight of that very mask pulls at his mind. Julius crushes his boot into the Grian's back, snapping Aster back to the present with a taunt about his soft upbringing. Mounting the defeated Grian, Julius flashes his own crimson mark and brutally mocks the kid for disgracing the Elmheim bloodline with a pathetic rank 6 score. Adding fuel to the fire, Julius violently seizes Grian by his heavy metal mask, sneering at how utterly pathetic his little sob story really is. With a sadistic grin, the eldest brother boasts about gifting this deadly motivation to his younger sibling, while the tyrant boasts, a horrifying reality of countless other masked victims started to appear in the hall. He details the brutal mechanics to the horrified onlookers. These cages restrict food, water, and air, forcing the wearer to fight for survival. Pure panic erupts among the students as the sheer scale of Elmheim's cruelty finally sinks in. Motioning to the lifeless-looking figures in the shadows, Julius introduces these broken souls as their upperclassmen. Turning his attention away from the crowd, the sadistic noble focuses on a lone figure with long red hair coaxing them out of the dark. Heavy footsteps echo through the tense hall as the mysterious senior slowly steps into the light. The horrifying sight freezes the protagonist in place as he instantly recognizes his older sister, Alphen, trapped behind the metal mask. The arrogant aristocrat spreads his arms with a twisted grin, silently mocking how completely unrecognizable Alphen has become. Standing rigidly in her white dress, Alphen is fully trapped within the suffocating iron cage. That horrifying realization shatters our hero's composure, and he screams her name for the entire hall to hear. But behind the cold metal, Alphen can only avert her eyes, utterly humiliated by her brother seeing her like this. A dark, explosive fury instantly replaces the shock on Aster's face as his teeth grind together. His leather-clad hand clamps down on his sword hilt, knuckles turning white from the sheer killing intent. Without hesitation, he lunges straight at the sadistic noble, demanding to know what they did to his flesh and blood. Before his blade can connect, Julius casually tosses a heavy iron cage onto the stone floor, halting the charge. Unfazed by the drawn blade, Julius casually toys with another metal cage, telling the furious brother to calm down. Beside him, the broken Grian lies motionless, a grim preview of what happens to those who resist. Dozens of metal shackles suddenly started to drop, as the tyrant boasts that he brought enough toys for the whole class. Planting his boot firmly on his fallen victim, the eldest Elmheim officially kicks off his twisted welcome party. The chaos erupts instantly as the masked upperclassmen swarm the new cadets, forcing Bigger to desperately parry a lethal strike. Watching from the sidelines, Julius Elmheim's eyes glow with sadistic delight as he offers his brainwashed hounds a twisted reward. He commands his mindless army to slap a metal cage on every single survivor and drag them to his feet. Sparks fly as Bigger struggles under the crushing weight of the assault, realizing his attackers are completely dead behind the eyes. Nearby, Nolan barely deflects a glowing blade, quickly calculating that these drones are all high-ranking elites. Reality hits Bigger hard. He always knew he'd have to fight the Elmheim faction, but this overwhelming ambush leaves them completely outmatched. Pushed to the absolute brink, he screams out for his boss before he ends up as just another brainwashed puppet. Before the attackers can land their fatal blow, Aster steps into the fray, his massive blade radiating a terrifying jagged red energy. In a single devastating flash of crimson, our hero obliterates the two elites, leaving them groaning in the dirt. His golden eyes lock onto the mastermind, burning with a cold, controlled fury. Standing nearby, Bigger can only stare in awe at the sheer pressure of that swirling power. Cutting through the tension, Aster demands to know what his twisted cousin is trying to accomplish. Unfazed by the hostility, Julius casually waves off the threat, claiming this brutal culling is just an act of goodwill. Even as Julius mocks their weakness, the grim reality plays out in his mind. Mindless enforcers brutalizing terrified students who just wanted to pass the exam. Leaning back with absolute arrogance, Julius gestures dismissively at the fallen, making it clear through his brutal display that only the elite deserve to survive. Dangling one of the twisted metal masks from his fingertips, Julius signals his horrifying intention to enslave the weaker students into total obedience. But our hero isn't interested in his cousin's twisted philosophy, cutting off the villain's monologue with a sharp rejection. Gripping his hilt as jagged crimson energy erupts from the blade, Aster demands that Julius remove the sickening device from Alphen's face immediately. Without waiting for an answer, he brings his massive glowing blade crashing down toward the mastermind's skull. The devastating strike is suddenly intercepted, and Aster freezes in horror as he realizes his own brainwashed sister has stepped in to protect their enemy. As Alphen forces him back with a sweeping slash of golden energy, Julius cruelly mocks his cousin, claiming she chose to stand by his side. Flashing a demonic grin, Julius urges Aster to ask her himself, twisting the psychological knife deeper into his cousin's heart. Forced into an impossible situation, our boy stares down the barrel of his sister's readied blade, the air heavy with unspoken tragedy. Watching from the sidelines, Lillian giggles at the cruel family drama, thoroughly entertained by the torment. The pieces finally click together in Aster's mind, the long silence, his mother's frantic worry, all leading to this sickening revelation of what truly happened to Alphen. Refusing to accept this twisted reality, he launches himself forward, his weapon engulfed in a monstrous crimson aura as he strikes at his own flesh and blood. Their blades collide with a massive shockwave, and Aster desperately promises to break her free from the tyrant's control right here and now. But the sheer force of her counterswing catches him completely off guard, staggering him backward as he realizes just how much power the mask has unlocked. Out of nowhere, Nolan from earlier vaults past him, furious at Aster's sudden hesitation in the heat of battle. Gripping his glowing weapon, Nolan steps forward with fierce determination, aiming his blade directly at the mastermind to finish the job Aster started. Disgusted by the cowardly tactics, Nolan glares at Julius, his expression radiating pure contempt for the disgraced knight. Leveling his glowing blade, the brave cadet demands the tyrant get out of his chair and fight like a real warrior. With a fierce battle cry, Nolan launches himself through the air, vowing to carve his family's martial arts style directly into the villain's flesh. However, the devastating thrust is caught barehanded, as Julius casually ignites his palm and mocks the boy's desperate effort. Rising from his seat, the blonde monster unleashes a terrifying aura of pure fire, his eyes glowing red as he shatters the junior's confidence. The searing heat travels straight up the blade, agonizingly roasting Nolan's arm before he can even pull away. Bathed in the hellish light of his own magic, Julius lets out a maniacal laugh, declaring that absolute strength is the only law that matters. Delivering a brutal flaming kick, the sadistic noble sends the helpless student flying across the courtyard like a discarded toy. Panicked, Big frantically rushes onto the battlefield, screaming his friend's name in sheer terror. Tragically, the damage is already done. Nolan lies crumpled in the dirt, his body smoking and completely incapacitated by the overwhelming attack. As the Bigger recoils at the horrific burns, Lillian chimes in, thoroughly amused by the junior's shattered pride. Looming over the defeated pair with an iron mask in hand, she sadistically announces her plan to keep the Nolan boy as her personal pet. Flashing a demonic smile, she coldly dismisses the conscious student, making it clear his life is completely worthless to her. Backing up his sister's cruelty, Julius arrogantly smirks, preaching that the strong have the absolute right to trample the weak. Shifting his glowing red gaze back to Aster, Julius points an accusing finger, clearly threatened by the growing resistance and setting the stage for their clash. Demonstrating his ruthless control, Julius watches with a sadistic smirk as another innocent cadet is violently forced into a mind-altering mask. Engulfed in a terrifying aura of pure fire, the blonde monster challenges our hero directly, his body radiating lethal heat. Glaring back with a fiercely glowing yellow eye, Aster refuses to back down against his sadistic relative's taunts. Without a second thought, Aster launches himself forward, bringing his crimson glowing blade down in a devastating overhead strike. The impact triggers a massive explosion of sparks, but the fiery noble effortlessly blocks the heavy blow with a smug grin. Gritting his teeth in sheer frustration, our boy strains against the impenetrable wall of flames, realizing his raw power isn't enough. Before he can even adjust his stance, a burning hand shoots out and seizes him completely by the throat. Roaring flames instantly consume the trapped swordsman, burning him at point-blank range as he screams in absolute agony. Watching from the sidelines, terrified Bigger screams out Aster's name in pure horror, completely powerless to stop the brutal execution. Disappointed by the pathetic display, the arrogant noble mocks the legendary title of the Seven Wings, dismissing his cousin as completely useless. Fully swallowed by the inferno, the young warrior's eyes slide shut, seemingly defeated by the overwhelming magical gap. But deep within the blaze, a crimson light pulses from his sword hilt as he tightly grips the weapon, refusing to stay down. Snapping his golden eyes open through the searing heat, Aster coldly warns his opponent not to celebrate a single successful block. Channeling the very fire meant to destroy him, he unleashes a monstrous spinning vortex of crimson energy that tears through the battlefield. Caught completely off guard by the sheer mechanics of Aster's counterattack, Julius finally shows a flicker of genuine panic. Watching the crimson blade slice through the inferno, a horrifying realization dawns on Julius as his own magic is violently turned against him. The devastating combination of flames and red energy slams directly into the tyrant, completely shattering his smug composure. With a deafening crash, the overwhelming shockwave launches the blonde elite backward, burying him deep within the academy's shattered masonry. Touching down amidst the floating embers, our hero coughs through the smoke and casually mentions he missed the villain's earlier speech. His sword still radiating intense power, he steps forward and ruthlessly dismisses every single word the arrogant noble had spewed. Standing over the broken battlefield, the victorious swordsman coldly dares his cousin to speak up. Shadows obscure his features as he delivers a merciless verbal strike, declaring that garbage has no right to talk. Massaging the scorch marks on his neck, those eerie golden eyes pierce through the dust as he mockingly asks if the fight is already over.